think we're all aware of FD signifier upon this channel. Yes, of course, a preamble. I came across this video and I was interested, and I did a little bit of a pre-watch, skimming through the video, and what I mostly want to talk about here, and something that I, broadly speaking, criticize a lot of people in the online left specifically. I'm not 100% certain how much this sort of affects IRL, sort of like leftist organizing, as much. I don't think it does. I'm inclined to not to believe that it doesn't as much, but the sort of overt cynicism that I see a lot of the left, generally speaking, have with a lot of these sort of congressional representatives, broadly speaking, that get within Congress who are unabashedly more so on the sort of nominally progressive liberal or more left-leaning sort of side, right? And generally speaking, a lot of the problems that I have with a lot of Western lefties specifically is the fact that seemingly they are just wholeheartly incapable of being able to compromise on any of their beliefs, right? Just they seemingly are just unable to engage in a lot of politics. The politics is a game of compromise, seeing what you can maximally sort of get away with, but eventually you have to come to, at some point, to the negotiating table in order to get sort of some form of concession out of the current power structures that be. And every sort of like Marxist revolutionary more or less understood this. Even Lenin understood this, right? For example, he would go ahead and work with more bourgeois liberal parties, such as the Labour Party of the UK, because he understood that, functionally speaking, it's better for them to be in power, for the broader sort of left within Britain, the Marxist left, anarchists, what have you, to have more ability to be able to engage in political action with a bourgeois liberal party being in power in comparison to that of a reactionary bourgeois party, right? Your conservatives, your fascists, what have you, right? And he was willing to make those compromises, even though he acknowledges that, well, there is this party that we're trying to essentially bolster is a bourgeois party, but it is what it is. We have to be able to be willing to make compromises, because not every sort of material condition on the ground is going to be perfect in every sort of society. That's just not how that works, right? We don't live in a utopian or utopia yet, I suppose, where we have necessarily the ability to be able to sort of maximally push for everything that we want. We have to be willing and able to compromise on, some of the, not core beliefs, but some of the more fringe stuff that's not going to be obviously implemented in order to be able to gain power, in order to be able to affect change. Because here's the thing with Zohran Mamdani. I see Zohran Mamdani, and I would probably agree with FD's probably overall sort of point here, that Zohran Mamdani can save the left, because I see Zohran as an opportunity. He is going to be the mayor of the city of all cities. When people think of a city, they think of New York City. It is the financial capital of the planet, a cultural capital of the planet. And him showing the American people what better looks like, what these more socialist left policies look like after decades upon decades of Red Scare, Cold War, anti-communist propaganda, it can show the American people that left policy is good, socialist policy is actually good. It is beneficial to the people. And this is an opportunity to show that. To show that. And because immediate problems that I have with a lot of these lefties, quote unquote, your socialist MMA types, Brianna Joy Gray types as well, a lot of them immediately had problems and were willing to immediately wheel out all the criticisms of Zohran Mamdani because he was compromising on some positions. For example, I believe FD Signifier does bring this up on Commissioner Jessica Tisch. Now, Jessica Tisch, piece of shit, Zionist fucking freak. However, we have to understand that taking on an institution like the NYPD not going to be easy for a mayor to take on. Unironically, the NYPD kidnapped, I think, Bill de Blasio's fucking daughter because Bill de Blasio did something that the NYPD did not like. They are an incredibly powerful institution, and you have to be very calculated and measured and careful as to how you're going to take them on, because they can fuck with your mayoralship, especially in New York City, where the NYPD has a significant amount of pull. So I'm not 100% certain what sort of backroom deals Zohran Mamdani did with the NYPD or Jessica Tisch and whatnot, because I know that Zohran Mamdani has said that he is quite satisfied with a lot of the anti-corruption work that Jessica Tisch did, removing a lot of Eric Adams's more corrupt Trumpian sort of stooges to sort of help facilitate a lot of the immigration crackdowns that Trump basically wanted to facilitate as a byproduct for Eric Adams to get that pardon for his corruption charges. I feel a lot of lefties don't remember that, especially your Brianna Joy Grays and socialist MMAs or national socialist MMAs of the world, because for these people, fundamentally speaking, being on the left is a cloak to them. It's a facade. It's just a moniker for them. They don't actually care about effective left policy and politics being implemented in positions of power. They don't give a shit about any of that. For them, it's all about getting a bunch more people onto their Substack articles and Patreons and podcasts to listen to them, their general sort of spew and dreck like dog shit propaganda and effectively neuter left-leaning organizational and political sort of movements. But I'm just curious, what does FD have to sort of say about this? Because he does a lot of the same stuff where he does like the overly sort of cynical stuff, which I don't really agree with in my personal opinion. I really do not like being overtly cynical about the advocates that we do have, the more effective advocates that we do have, because going after the AOCs of the world, albeit like I do kind of agree now with some of the criticisms of AOC more recently, I don't really know what she's doing politically speaking. Like, I know she's trying to garner favor within the Democratic Party to be able to do like some form of a Senate run, potentially, or maybe even presidential run. I'm not 100% certain, and she's been willing to compromise very often with the sort of broader establishment Democrats for seemingly nothing. I'm not 100% certain what's going on in the back rooms and the backroom dealings in sort of like inter-party sort of negotiations, but I can assume that she's doing this for the ability to try to run for some form of higher office, whether it be for Senate or for the presidency. Who really knows exactly? My guess, she might be angling for the presidency, which I don't know 100% how to feel for that. I mean, I'm probably going to support AOC because, well, I am a Canadian. So I guess I could just throw my sort of hat behind AOC because she's ostensibly going to be the best candidate out of the potential sort of 2028 roster that the Democrats, generally speaking, have. But, you know, it's still going to be like a tough race and all that stuff. I digress, right? Like, a lot of people sort of like go hard on the current progressive advocates, especially like AOC and Bernie, and not so much with like Ilhan Omar or Rashida Tlaib. but they'll like go hard on them for seemingly really terrible reasons, really really stupid reasons, and are just acting in an overtly, just a very very cynical manner. I think for basically no reason whatsoever. It's like these are the advocates that we have, and we're going after our more further left leaning, sympathetic to left leaning uh, people in power for what exactly? Why are we wasting our energy on that when there are more important people to go after, like your Henry Cuellars of the world? It doesn't really make much sense to me, strategically speaking. Like, if we want to primary, like, blue dog conservative Democrats in very, very blue districts, I think it's significantly more important to go after people like that in comparison to the AOCs of the world instead. Like, it just doesn't really make any sense to me. Despite the fact that, yes, there are, like, some votes and some actions that you can certainly criticize her for, where it doesn't make a lot of sense, where it's just like, oh, that's a little strange why she's doing that. But again, it's one of those situations where some of these actions might be taken simply due to the fact that what is the point of trying to appease a lot of these more like puritanical rather lefties? What's the point of them? It doesn't matter what I do; they're going to be upset anyways. What is the point of appealing to them? Because again, like AOC had some of those messages before, where a bunch of her votes, mostly on Israel, were just being criticized. I would say rightly so, where she talks about like, I mean, dog, whatever. I'm voting for like all these defensive weapons being sent to Israel because of blah 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 reasonings or whatever the fuck she was saying. It was really really poor reasoning for as to why she did a lot of Iron Dome funding voting, but I digress. If a lot of people just keep going after her for like no reason, and same with ContraPoints, I also would throw ContraPoints in this as well. There's like they're just going to turn on the more further left elements and sort of like develop this idea of the left as these incredibly puritanical, unsatiable. I don't think this not is the correct word. These sort of just unreasonable individuals. There's no point in talking to these people. Fuck these people. Why should I appeal to them? I'm just going to become more reactionary on certain positions just to spite these people, which I don't think is incredibly fucking effective. What I'm basically saying here is compromise within politics is important. Being able to appeal to liberals is very important because left-leaning ideas should appeal specifically to liberals over neoliberal ideas, which are just outright conservative, right-leaning ideas, right? Lefty ideas should be able to bring more liberals into the sort of broader sort of tent and perhaps even turn them into leftists. And I think that's a more effective strategy. Sometimes you're going to have to compromise a little bit in terms of your messaging, and that's just how it is. That's politics. It's a popularity contest. You need people in order to be able to get into power. There's a lot more liberals that exist rather than annoying dumb fuck Twitter lefties in comparison, if we care about playing politics and gaining power. So I'm essentially saying that compromise is important. Lenin also recognized that compromise is important. Every socialist and communist within history recognize that compromise is important for the express purpose of being able to defeat more reactionary bourgeois elements of the current society that we live in, which I think is significantly more important to be focusing on rather than just constantly going after the current progressive advocates and more left of liberal advocates and politicians that we currently have in power. Because unfortunately, we are in a sort of position where we kind of have to rely on politicians within power because of, well, A, class consciousness being in a position where it's really, really terrible, and left organizing, albeit, say it is an emergent force, but it's not going to really take the United States by storm, right? DSA, relatively speaking, is still a tiny fish in a big pool of the predators in comparison to the broader sort of Democratic and Republican establishment, sort of like donor structures and the whatnot in comparison to DSA. Not to say that DSA doesn't have influence, right? They have a ton of influence over local elections and have been doing obviously very, very good organizational and political work in order to be able to get people in power to be able to improve local politics, which is good. It's where you should start. Show the people that better is possible, and then carry that momentum into more national and statewide victories. Like, I'm like, really, like, in reality, the mayoralship of New York is it's a monumental victory, because if Zohran Mamdani is able to get into office and is successful with his policies, that it will show the American people that better is possible, that people are going to be more galvanized and willing and able to go out there and organize. And it's a flashpoint, basically. It's a show of, I was going to say will or force, but it's not exactly correct. It's basically a way to basically show that better is possible. And I think it's very important to show to people that, yeah, better is possible. And I think that's just probably one of the most important things to be able to show, well, not only the American people, but everybody in general, to be like, listen, like, shit's terrible right now, but better is possible, right? And these people are pushing for better, so we should give our support to them, help them out in order for them to be able to be successful with their policies and show the world that, yes, conservatism is significantly fucking better in comparison to the complete dreck that we find ourselves under right now and have found ourselves under for the latter part of about 40 fucking years. I'm going. This is a very, very long preamble. I'm going on a bit of a tangent here. Why don't we just get into the video? I want to see what FD specifically says about a lot of this stuff.
I got my cloth, y'all, but I can't find my glasses. I think they're in the car, and the car's in the shop, so we're just gonna
unlucky.
Just feel a little different this time. I can still see fine. I might have a headache when this is all done. We're gonna make it happen. Speaking of things happening, there's something happening in American politics right now that should scare a lot of people, but maybe not the people watching this particular video. It should scare our ops, so to speak. Despite how ugly things are right now, and things are very much ugly, if you're looking at public sentiment in the last few years up to now, you'll notice that there are a lot of new trains of thought, or really I should say old trains of thought, returning to the public discourse, the public imagination for the first time in decades. The way people are talking about what we should expect from our government and our economy and how all these things should be organized, all of that is shifting. It's not a fever pitch, it's not fully saturated, it's definitely not perfect, but it is happening.
I definitely agree with this 1000% with FD Signifier. 1000%, and it's a good thing. It's showing that the sort of like McCarthyite propaganda is a failure. It's over now, right? Okay, bit of an anecdote. I have a normie friend, right? He's one of my best friends, childhood friend of mine. He has started talking about how he works in finances, okay? He works with like a fucking bank and shit, okay? The guy who you would never expect to speak positively on socialism has begun speaking positively on state-run economies. He's been speaking very positively about socialist systems within, say, China. Now, obviously, I don't 100% agree with China being socialist. It's state-run sort of capitalism. The fundamental relationships between proletariat and bourgeois have not really been addressed within China, yada yada yada, essentially saying that state sort of regulation and state-run sort of programs are effective, using the power.
I love China.
I love China. That's true, I do love China. using the state in order to be able to help rein in and regulate the current laissez-faire capitalistic systems, because currently, right now, that shit is a disaster. It's a disaster. I think we can all acknowledge that the system is on the verge of another, I would say, Great Depression to Electric Boogaloo sort of collapse. I think we can, broadly speaking, agree with all this, especially considering the current AI bubble that's going on right now. I think we can all acknowledge this. And my buddy was saying, like, yeah, like, I think the Chinese system, how they run things, I think is, like, way significantly better than what we are currently running, what we currently have right now in the West. I'm like, I agree with this. I do agree, right? Like, in terms of the, like, I don't call it socialism. He calls it socialism because he thinks that he unfortunately operates off of the definition that socialism is when the government does stuff. It's like, that's not what it is, but sure, whatever. I do think that the state using its power in order to be able to help significantly rein in corporations and implement a lot of regulation is obviously a good thing. It's social democracy, although with, like, China, it's more like social autocracy. But that's why I prefer talking about the more Nordic systems. But, you know, whatever. Yeah, communism is when the government does all the stuff. Yeah. Like, you know, Richard Wolff meme inserted here, obviously. But seeing this attitude change happening, broadly speaking, to a lot of, like, more normie liberals acknowledging that the current system that is in place right now is a failure. And even, like, a lot of the more Democrat, liberal-leaning sort of, like, content creators, normie content and politics content creators are acknowledging, saying, like, yeah, what we currently have is a complete fucking failure. It's not working. We need, like, in some instances, they've said, like, we need, like, a New Deal type sort of system, New Deal 2 Electric Boogaloo, in order to be able to fix these problems. We need something radical. And this is something that can be harnessed, this can be captured and sort of channeled into positive political change. A lot of lefties online are just, generally speaking, not very interested in any of that, because they don't really give a shit about it, because if they don't get to LARP like revolutionaries, none of these motherfuckers are actually going to care about what is effective sort of, like, political change.
One example of this comes from the story of a legitimate socialist running for mayor in New York, Buffalo, New York, back in 2021. You may have missed this because it was relatively niche at the time and it was at the height of the pandemic, but in Buffalo, New York, a black woman named India Walton ran as a Democratic socialist and won her primary race against a long-standing establishment candidate named Byron Brown, who had been entrenched in...
From what I understood, like, I know someone who's in Buffalo. He's talked about this race before, and he generally had some, like, criticisms of, like, India Walton, right? I don't know, like, overtly sort of, like, cynical stuff, but this is, yeah, I know what FD is going to mention here, talking about how Byron Brown essentially just ran a write-in campaign as an independent fucking candidate, and in the general, and managed to defeat India Walton, right? Like, some real fucking Democrat tomfoolery is going on here, because we all know what the purpose of the Democratic Party is, basically, at this point, is to effectively try to be a stopgap, a sort of disruptor of more populist, left-leaning fervor within the country.
In the role of mayor of that city for almost 20 years at that point. Like most major cities, the Democratic nominee race was the only real election that mattered, and by winning the nominee, India Walton was all but guaranteed to become the city's next mayor, or so it was thought. See, the Democratic Party, surprise, surprise, showed its true colors and its allegiance to power and the status quo by helping Byron Brown mount a massive independent campaign in Buffalo as a write-in candidate, even helping him mass-produce stamps to give out to voters that they could use to write his...
Yeah, similar to Andrew Cuomo, but honestly, I think, like, with Andrew Cuomo, that was more of, like, a disaster, I'll be honest. I don't even know if Andrew Cuomo did any of that shit. But I mean, like, Andrew Cuomo was more of a known factor, probably in comparison to Byron Brown. I don't think a lot of people knew as much about, like, Byron Brown in comparison to how much of a, like, an ostensible piece of shit Andrew Cuomo is.
his name in for mayor by just stamping the name on the page, which sounds illegal, but I don't know. Despite the fact that Brown had been mayor for going on 20 years and had seen the city decline in numerous ways that entire time, this was presented as a win for the people, but in reality, the Democratic establishment in New York just refused the people's will and did not get behind the candidate chosen for their party. Furthermore, Brown received significant support and donations from New York City Republicans that fueled him to victory. Hilariously, Brown would then abandon his role as mayor 2 years later after he accepted a role as a CEO of a horse betting organization or something in New York. That was when that definitely needed to happen.
Oh, yeah, honestly, this sounds like classic New York fucking corruption in politics constantly. I don't know, bro's got the horses in the fucking back or something. Like, okay, bro, horse betting fucking... Is horse betting even that prominent in fucking Buffalo? Like, you hear about it in, like, commercials around Niagara, and I mean, Buffalo is relatively close to Niagara Falls? I don't know, it's a little fucking weird.
For the people of Buffalo. I don't know too much about the city of Buffalo, nor do I know how the end result of that mayoral race affected local politics, but I know some folks that do.
Shout out to the Mamdanis, shout out to all the socialist mayors. I do believe that if it wasn't for India Walton, I don't know if y'all be around. I'm just saying.
The way he did it was so insidious too. I'm not gonna lie. I think the stamps just killed me.
There is a part of Buffalo, we call it, it's South Buffalo, that is, at the time, not necessarily now, but at the time, predominantly conservative, and still to this day, predominantly white. And even though they didn't like the incumbent mayor, Byron Brown, they really didn't like the black woman socialist. I worry less about Mamdani. And
so it's, so more like reactionary bourgeois sort of backlash from an insurgent sort of, well, socialist mayoral candidate. It's, I don't know, it's like, it's about as classic gets, right?
Worry more about his constituents. There's a part of me that also worries about, people stopping here and feeling like you said, thinking that electoral politics is going to be what gets us out of our current situation, when in reality it's not. Politicians are always going to disappoint you.
Not like a politician being a socialist is not going to do that for you. Like people, I think, like I share Alia's sentiments of that worry of like people giving up their, putting their hands up and being like, well, we did it. We got a socialist mayor, so there's something else that, we need to do.
I love how socialist mayor feels so pejorative.
I can definitely agree with this, by the way. I echo the exact same sentiment. This is just, it's step zero. It is step zero for Zohran Mamdani to get into power, right? Like, this is just the beginning, okay? Now the real work begins, because there will be there will be reactionary elements, not only within the city council, which, again, Eric Adams has said himself that he will try to stack in order to fuck over Zohran Mamdani. Same with also a bunch of city councilors within New York saying that we will attempt to stop Zohran Mamdani's broader sort of agenda, although apparently that doesn't necessarily matter as much from what a bunch of local reporters are saying, from stuff that I've read, so hopefully that's going to be the case. To also elements within Albany, because he needs Kathy Hochul's support in order to be able to do a lot of his sort of agenda. He needs a funding from Albany, from the governor, in order to be able to get a lot of that stuff. Now, for the time being, Kathy Hochul is seemingly capitulating is on the side of Zohran Mamdani, even though she is rather seemingly feeling uneasy about the fact that when Zohran Mamdani had his campaign rally on the day before the elections, a lot of people were chanting "Eat the Rich." Kathy Hochul was not very comfortable with a lot of those chants. It was very, very clear and obvious. And, well, given Zohran Mamdani's sort of prominence and popularity, she kind of has to go significantly along with a lot of not with Zohran Mamdani's tune in particular, because of the fact that she herself also has a governor primary with a progressive challenger, something Delgado, right? And she's probably going to need Zohran Mamdani's help in order to be able to win that primary. Now, Zohran hasn't endorsed anyone quite yet in that primary. He's not thrown his weight behind anyone because he knows that he has leverage in this particular case. If Kathy Hochul doesn't give him what he wants, he's going to throw his weight behind Delgado. If Kathy Hochul does give him what he wants, again, this is politics, people. This is how it fucking works, lefties. Very important that you remember this. He can be like, oh, okay, so Kathy Hochul is giving me all the funding that I want for me to be able to sort of do my general sort of policy goals and agenda, and I can basically enact my sort of, I guess for lack of a better term, will here in order to be able to do the free busing, freeze the rent, do the pilot program for the free groceries and the public grocery stores within New York, tax the rich significantly more with the increase in corporate sort of tax rate and the wealth tax that I'm also looking to implement in order to be able to fund for a lot of my programs. Have City Hall be significantly more responsive to a lot of the complaints of the people, and actually have local government be seen as a force to help improve the lives of New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs, right? He's going to need people in positions that are sympathetic to him specifically in order to be able to have this broader sort of like policy agenda be implemented. And like I said before, like the reason why it's important to put a lot of stock into Zohran Mamdani is because this is, again, an opportunity to show the American people that better is possible. There's more important sort of stakes and goals at play here.
This is a great conversation that I had with these members of Lola. This whole conversation should be available by now on the Signify podcast channel. But I love how we use the term socialist mayor here in somewhat of a tongue-in-cheek way, both maybe with a tinge of hope, but also with an appropriate level of cynicism, I think, as we recognize that while it's good that figures like India Walton, or maybe more significantly, Brandon Johnson in Chicago, make strides to reintroduce socialism to American politics, that fundamentally electoral politics as a whole is a limited use tool for the goals of liberation for Black people and Americans and the world in general. On one end, as I alluded to earlier, having the concept of socialism not just be reintroduced to the American public consciousness, but also get legitimate political wins is a good thing and speaks to a spark that the American left has not had since the 70s. However, there's a reason why it's been so long since leftist political ideals have been taken seriously in the mainstream. The deck has not just been stacked, but meticulously manipulated for 50 years to not allow this type of wave that we're currently in to happen. And more importantly, we have to be able to recognize that this wave is just that. It is not radical or revolutionary or promised to sustain. It's just the energy of the moment. And it's important to keep that perspective regardless of how our desires to take a victory lap make us feel, because I've seen all of this before, and I know how the story ends depending on the decisions and trajectories we take right now. And this brings me to one Zohran Mamdani, the current premier leader of the Communist Republic of New York City, or if you want to be more normal about things, the mayor-elect of New York City. Recently, Mamdani made history by becoming one of the youngest and maybe I think the first ever Muslim mayor of the country's richest, most populous, and most important city. He has immediately thrust himself onto the big stage of politics, becoming a powerful figure in the Democratic Party, and he comes into that position with a ton of fanfare, goodwill, and hope.
No good? What are you doing in my falafel?
And the last time I've seen something like this was in 2008 with Barack Obama. This is something I tried to talk about a few months ago, but everyone got mad at me about it. I saw folks say that Obama was always a fake leftist and that no one with any real sense ever thought he was going to fundamentally change American politics, et cetera, et cetera. But Mamdani, he's the real deal. Zohran Mamdani is going to be the change that this country has been looking for, ushering in the leftist utopia that will see us finally make improvements for America's working class, become a champion of affordability, address the police state in New York City, and completely divest from the Zionist entity in the Middle East, along with every other aspect of our American imperial apparatus that's going to be fixed once he becomes.
Okay, I mean, there's probably has been some people online that have been saying this, but I don't really listen, I like to think of myself as one of Zohran's sort of strongest soldiers, but I don't think it's going to necessarily happen, right? Like, tempering of expectations is very important. Again, this is politics. Compromise is important. Like, again, my sort of goals here in particular with why I think it's very important for Zohran Mamdani to be able to win, again, in the city of cities, that being New York, is to show not only the world, potentially the world, but the American people that better is possible. You can aspire for more. That, yeah, sure, the system will exist to grind you down into dust. It wants you to not be participatory within it. It wants you to check out and not advocate for your positions. But Zohran Mamdani basically shows that there is a more positive path forward and that there can be a better path forward. the politics of like joy and whimsy, which has only been replaced with a lot of, I would say, overt sort of cynicism and like calculations, where it's just like, well, no, like the point of politics is to get people energized and excited and aspirational for something in the future, that it is okay to put your stock into someone, to believe in something, like to have aspirations for something better in the future. Because again, the overt cynicism that a lot of lefties like to immediately jump into. Now, obviously, should you criticize politicians and power, yada yada? Yeah, of course, obviously. I'm not going to like be against criticizing those in power. I'm not stupid, right? Like, you should expect better from those in power. No fucking shit. But the overt sort of cynicism and just inner desire for a lot of these people to immediately just like shoot down everything, like every possible proposal, every possible position, and anything that a lot of these people in power try to do to improve the general lives. Well, if it doesn't neatly fit into like the sort of like lunch table politics like group that I've decided to basically start hanging around in, it's fucked. I'm going to basically check out of the system, and I'm not going to give a shit about like what this politician has to say at all. It's just like, it's just not how that works. You can't participate in politics that way. That's essentially you begging to be ignored from those in power to not be directly sort of appealed to. Again, like, my main sort of criticism here mostly goes to the Brianna Joy Grays of the world and socialist MMAs of the world, right? These people who are just wholeheartedly uninterested, I would say, in participating in politics, because for them, this is all just a grift for them.
Comes our new leader. Sadly, as I predicted, the belief that he was going to be our new leftist god didn't quite ring true. I could say I told you so. I did tell you so. Listen to your elders. Listen. That's the end of the video. I want to be clear, though, when I was developing this take early, it was never to outright say Mamdani is going to be just as bad as Obama in terms of disappointing the people that support him. My goal more so was to engage with how the people were getting energized and remind everyone that we can't put all of our faith and hope into any politician, no matter how based or how good their politics seem to be. And as Mamdani has shown that he is first.
I don't know. I'm not going to disagree with FD and say that this wasn't a thing that wasn't happening. Like, obviously, like, the people are going to be sort of inclined to want to put all their, I don't know, eggs in one basket and want to believe in something. But I mean, can you really blame people for that? Can you really blame people for that, right? Like, it's one of those things where it's just like, yeah, I don't think it's good to put all of your stock in a politician. Like, I don't disagree with that, obviously. But I don't necessarily blame anyone for doing that sort of behavior exactly. Considering just how terrible everything is right now, I don't know, like, unironically, hashtag I need a fucking hero. Like, because there's, everything is just gone to shit, and it's so fucking terrible right now that at some point, there needs to be some kind of hope. It's okay to believe, right? Like, I think it's totally fine for you to believe and be like, oh, finally, someone can actually get in there, fix a lot of the problems that are currently happening in this godforsaken fucking country, and start to actually try to fix things. Is he going to be able to fix everything, like shebang, shebang, shabong? No, probably not, but there's at least, I know there's going to be a significant sort of improvement, and it's something that can be aspired to, especially for a lot of other, like, local candidates who are looking to sort of, I would say, like, participate within electoral politics, which is, like, that's what I mostly want, right? Like, more and more, like, I want the Zohran Mamdani fucking printer machine. Like, get more Zohrans out there in order to be able to have some form of, like, good happen within the broader world of politics. Because right now, it's pretty fucking bleak it's not looking great. The economy is obviously in the complete shitter. Trump is doing illegal deportations and detentions of random fucking migrants they see because of the Supreme Court essentially saying like, oh yeah, dude, like if they're brown, fuck it, who cares? Yeah, you can just racially profile them. Who gives a shit, right? I think it's okay for people to have hope and put some form of stock to be able to have, like, I don't know, belief in someone out there being able to significantly improve things. Because everything right now is just so bleak. Like, I think it's, like, totally okay.
First and foremost a politician, my goal still is not to just simply point and say Mamdani is bad, actually, but to remind people that regardless of how good or bad Mamdani's politics are, it's our work and our energy that we put into him that is the actual real value and real lesson that we need to be paying attention to. But now that Mamdani's actually won, and I got the bit of shade out the way, we can stop crafting a narrative around Mamdani that he is our Marxist-Leninist brown king by way of Africa, and say that regardless of his many flaws that we'll get to, Mamdani good, actually. There's some serious criticisms to engage with around Mamdani that I will get to in a moment. What I really want to do here is try to model a type of pluralism. Try to show that you can embody two truths at once, something that so many of us active online refuse to see as possible. Ironically, for the left, we struggle mightily with non-binary thinking. And we also have a rather causal mentality on whether or not someone's political project is of any use or value to the people as a whole. And on the flip side, many of us can't take it when our faves are criticized. Even with the most good faith and legitimate criticism, it's met with the energy of a K-pop fan arguing with one of the barbs. I'm inclined to believe that somewhere in there is a man who...
There are legitimate criticisms that you can have of AOC, like that Iron Dome vote, like votes. Those are fucking pretty dog shit. Although to be honest, like a lot of the stuff that a lot of these more sort of, I don't know, force the vote types, again, like Socialist MMA and Breonna Joy Gray bring up are just complete fucking dog shit. Stupid criticisms that need to be like thrown out of the window immediately because they're just stupid. Really dumb, bad fucking criticisms. Like, again, with the force to vote stuff specifically, like, because that shit was just never gonna fucking work. Trying to force the vote on some necessary state funding in order to force a vote on Medicare for all when that's not going to be brought on the floor of the House for a vote, because why would anyone bring a vote for like Medicare for all to the floor of the House to know who would support it or not support it when we already have that information based off of the co-sponsors of the Medicare for all bills that exist. It's incredibly fucking stupid, and it's just a waste of political capital and time for no reason. That's a dumb criticism of AOC, right? Just a random sort of example. That's like stuff that your Jackson Hinkle types would bring up. Because again, those are people that are broadly speaking not interested in engaging in politics. They just have their own sort of grifts that they're doing, right? Same with Jimmy Dore. Same with, again, Breonna Joy Gray and also Socialist MMA and a bunch of these other sort of like weirdo puritanical MLs, dipshits, grifters. They're grifters, who are just not broadly speaking interested in engaging in politics. They don't give a shit about any of that stuff. It's one of these situations where it's just like there are criticisms that can be had. Obviously, just don't make them fucking stupid. Don't make like really really just stupid, inaccurate like criticisms. Actually like engage. I'm trying to think of like what the best way of exactly putting this is. There's like real criticisms that you can have of a lot of these people, and then for the most part, generally speaking, when a lot of these like more force the vote types have their sort of like 2 cents, it's one of those situations where you just like look at it and it's just like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? Like, this is going to be incredibly ineffective, and you motherfuckers have, like, no clue or no idea whatsoever what you're talking about. And it just becomes, like, a complete, like, nonsense shit show fest where it's just like, okay, bro, nice meme.
who had a degree in black studies and read all the same shit I've read, who was far more sincere than Barack Obama ever was with his leftist ideal. But I also know at some point that Zohran Mamdani and Barack Obama had at least 2 conversations, and that regardless of how I and others want to imagine Zohran Mamdani, he is still a literal card-carrying member of the Democratic Party at this point. So, and regardless of the fact that Democrats aren't as bad as Republicans, they're still very, very bad, and anyone who is a member of their crew is inherently an op. Those are both true things, seemingly opposing each other, but yet existing all at once. I wish I could believe in a more simple take on Mamdani, but if anything, him being a complex figure gives us the opportunity to do something important in this video, to not oversimplify what he represents in our political.
I mean, like, to be honest, if he refused to talk with, like, because again, I've talked about this before, but if you want to be able to sort of improve the politics of the Democratic Party, you have to go after and criticize Obama way more, because the fact that Obama still has the popularity and pull that he has in the Democratic Party is really bad and criminal, because he is always going to be a very effective stopgap in terms of any insurgent sort of left movement, right? We all know about the centrist Voltron that Obama helped assemble for Joe Biden during the 2020 election. That was all Obama. If we want to be successful in dragging the Democratic Party further to the left, Obama, in the mind of your average fucking liberal, has to be seen as the moral aberrance that he is, right? He has to be seen as the, well, ineffective president that he always was. And that's, broadly speaking, in the general sort of zeitgeist of the Democratic Party, that work has not really been effectively done.
Reality. This is a high-stakes 7D chess game of political intrigue right now, and there's too much going on to feel too comfortable in an overtly simplistic understanding of Mamdani, his political wave, and whatever might happen next. So with that in mind, I found some folks that I felt had varying perspectives on Zohran Mamdani, folks that are his detractors, folks that are his supporters, and those with stakes in the game. In doing so, I hope that this video helps everyone develop as room temperature and balance a take on Mamdani as possible. Not because he's so good and that there's nothing to worry about, not because he's so bad and we should all revolt, but because our job in the equation is to resist stan culture and anti-fan culture, and teach and learn how to grow for the moment, plan what people should be focused on next, and further our political goals. So we're gonna take a nice relaxing, easygoing look at this story. I'm gonna skip the old school hip hop and the trap beats. So we're gonna do some like jazz rap and some lo-fi as we start to discuss our left-wing chosen one, the Marxist Quetzalcoatl cataract from Uganda, Zohran Mamdani.
Turn the volume up! It always seems impossible until it is done.
I know some niggas on the stage with the shit. I know some niggas in the door with the remix. I know niggas got 2 bodies, still a teenager. I'm so sorry, but absolutely nothing. Can't nobody fuck with me.
Furthermore, the name is Mamdani.
Keep them at 10 for that fuck with me.
Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
So first, let's talk about all the things that lead us up to this point. I feel like I don't have to give a ton of intro to Mamdani at this point, but I do want to discuss the conditions that led to his seemingly unlikely outcome.
As I like think about like the energy that I've collected with my platform is like, how do I show people that it's like, hey, like, I understand like Mamdani's real cool. He was a really good president, but what y'all need to take from this is that like this election got won. He went from 1% to this because people were knocking doors. It's like he got to there not just through memes. It's like you all hold this power.
I think, yeah, the amount of volunteers that I think he ended the campaign with was like 100,000. Unheard of, by the way. That's insane for a local mayoral election. 100,000 fucking volunteers, right? Like, that's fucking nuts, dude. The amount of people that he was able to pull in to do canvassing work for him as like an army of fucking volunteers is genuinely fucking insane. Like, that's probably one of the biggest reasons for as to why he was able to win, because he had the pull, man. He had the Riz.
Power. And it's like more so than investing this into like being like, wow, look at this magic Mamdani did. It's like, look at the fact that like for this long of period of time, like for months, everyone's canvassing, everyone's doing this. Like you can do that, not just about like a guy. Like do this about the things you want to happen.
And it's because of that black studies degree. I just feel like you can't
No,
get that
stop,
degree.
stop.
Damn, no, I'm full of shit right now, you know.
He's fooling your heartstrings already. Stop. Look, you're saying, oh, at least Obama waited till he, won. Zohran was doing it before he won. Difficult part of winning, the primary. I feel like that was a difficult part. That's the one where I was kind of like, is he going to be able to pull it off? Is he not? What does he start doing? He does like the reverse Grand Platinum. He starts apologizing for like actually being a leftist at some point, right? He goes on Fox News and starts groveling to like the NYPD. And he says, oh no, I privately, kissed their boots, but now I'm here to do it publicly. And to that level, I'm like, bro, like you're acting like if you haven't won the the primary yet. Like, stop. Who are you catering to? What are you doing here? It's not for votes.
Okay, well, the problem, again, it's one of those situations where it's like, yeah, obviously having to grovel at the feet of the NYPD is obviously not a very good fucking look. But again, we know what those motherfuckers are capable of and what they have done in order to make sure that their power is essentially put in place. Sorry, he used to have like some tweets that he apologized for, and that a bunch of like mainstream outlets were being like really stupid and fucking annoying about, right? And he said like, yeah, you know, I said that in a moment of anger for the George Floyd protest, yada yada yada, right? That's what he, you know, that's not 100% what he said, out of context, Torino, blah 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 blah. The NYPD is basically a small military. It's an army. Taking on those guys is going to be really fucking difficult. And Zohran Mamdani, sure, he has like some policies talking about how he wants to do the real goals of defund the police, saying that there needs to be like a reallocation of resources from the police department into essentially from not only just doing like police work and enforcing, I don't know, like whatever dipshittery and having like a bunch of thugs going around and just beating homeless people. How about instead we have them focus on what they are supposed to actually do, and that is, well, dealing with violent fucking crime, which is the purpose of what the police is supposed to do. Yeah, exactly, Zane. Biggest gang in New York, the NYPD. And they're like equipped like a small fucking military. Taking on that organization, it's not an easy task. That's really fucking difficult. And we can quibble about what exactly Zohran Mamdani would prefer to do. And it is entirely possible that he's probably way more focused on trying to get his agenda through, his affordability agenda through, in comparison to trying to take down the NYPD. Because he has said before that he is okay with keeping Commissioner Jessica Tisch on because of a lot of the anti-corruption work that I mentioned earlier that she did, removing a bunch of Eric Adams's stooges who were put in positions of power within the NYPD at the behest of Donald Trump, as a part of Eric Adams trying to get his pardon from Donald Trump for the fact that he's a corrupt fucking shithead. You know, he is one of Turkey's strongest soldiers, right? We all know this, right? And the sort of issue becomes then, it's like, you need to pick your fucking battles. What Zohran Mamdani wants to do is ultimately, I would say, quite ambitious in terms of the affordability agenda that he is fighting for. You need to really, really pick your battles, right? And fighting off the NYPD, who are going to be a force who will fuck with you. Like, I believe I've said this before, but they unironically, I think, kidnapped Bill de Blasio's fucking daughter because, again, Bill de Blasio decided to implement some form of regulations that the NYPD did not fucking agree with. The NYPD, they are, again, a huge gang where they will basically say, like, okay, well, we have a ton of power and sway politically speaking. We will use that to make your life more miserable. We'll do it. We don't really give much of a shit. Like, fuck you, bitch. Like, you can eat shit and we'll make you suffer. We don't really give much of a shit at all. Dismantling that organization and essentially basically reining them in, trying to regulate them, you have to be very careful as to how you approach that, because it's not an easy task. It is quite difficult.
Votes. So who is it for? And I do think that it's for, the establishment. I do think it's to let people know, to signal to them, hey,
I'm here.
It's all for show. I'm here for you.
Zohran Mamdani is the current mayor-elect of New York City, becoming the youngest, first foreign-born, and first Muslim to ever be mayor of that city. This makes him unique as a mayor over any major city, but even more unique as a mayor as the biggest, richest city in the country, if not the world. That already makes him improbable, all things considered, but then you have to add on more. Before running, Mamdani was a relatively outspoken progressive, having made statements in the past about the criminality of the New York City police. He criticized Israel, calling it an apartheid state and saying that it was committing a genocide. He has a degree in Africana studies, which he says had a deep influence on him, which makes sense because his father is a professor of Africana studies, which also makes sense of his middle name, Kwame, referencing the Pan-Africanist legend Kwame Nkrumah, the former president of Ghana. I'm going to compare Mamdani to Obama for a lot of reasons, but here's one place where it's arguably going to be a stark difference. While Obama seemingly had a very cavalier and almost libertine background and indicates his engagement with leftist ideology was not very intrinsic to his worldview, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure it was said at some point that he only read Marx and talked to girls about it.
This is what drives me wild about this. Like what you're saying about like Obama. I tell you, I've been in
not Zohran. FD is correct about that. Like, if I recall correctly, like fucking Obama would bring up certain like Marxist philosophers based on certain girls that he would speak to. It's like, bring up some Hegel. If we're talking to the more slender, like gothic lesbian chick or some shit. Yeah. Like the meme of like Obama sounding like a fucking incel, because of based off of the fact that he read a bunch of like leftist literature and he wasn't able to get any bitches on his dick in college because of that, and then I don't know, had to settle for Michelle Obama in his mind or some shit or whatever, and became like a neoliberal like drone striker in chief. Like, let me get the fucking meme. It's unironically funny. Okay, I didn't find the meme version of this, but I found the unironic like excerpt about this. Like, what? Looking, I think this is like a biography of Obama, of how he discovered Marx and Foucault in college as the way to pick up chicks. Which, by the way, if you want to have like if you want to pick up like left-leaning like college girls or whatever, which is going to be like the vast majority of chicks, reading the philosophers of like Marx and Foucault, reading like postmodernist philosophy in order to this is like the worst way of trying to do this. It's never going to work because it's going to come off as incredibly fucking fake. Like, you're going to be like seen through like instant fucking taneously. This doesn't fucking work. Like, looking back, it's embarrassing to recognize the degree to which my intellectual curiosity for those first 2 years of college paralleled the interests of various women I was attempting to get to know. Dude, yeah, this is how I get the hose. I read Marx and Foucault. Very, very funny, dude. Marx and Marcuse. So I had something to say to the long-legged socialist who lived in my dorm. Fanon and Gwendolyn Brooks for the smooth-skinned sociology major who never gave me a second look. Foucault and Wolfe for the ethereal bisexual who wore mostly black. The goth bisexuals. Very funny. As a strategy for picking up girls, my pseudo-intellectualism proved mostly worthless. Yeah, because again, like, they see through. They're not stupid. Like, a lot of these girls who are going to engage in more philosophy and with a lot of these people, like, it's not gonna fucking work, bro. Like, it doesn't work. It's very, very fucking stupid. Like, leftists aren't stupid. They're gonna pick up on that shit, sniff it out, and be like, bro, you're not all that. You're fucking full of shit. Like, okay, bro. Like, yeah, man. Yeah, you totally really care about Marx and fucking Foucault as you just want to get in our pants. We fucking know that, bro. It's like, okay, dude. I found myself in a series of affectionate but chaste friendships. So, yeah. Bro did the unironic fucking incel meme. It's just like, perhaps if I read all these books and basically try to read all these things, I'm gonna get all these socialist honeys.
Stupid fucking communist!
Yeah, stupid fucking communist. Yeah, fuck you. Thank you, Hassan, for agreeing with my position. Yeah. And in order to pick up all these chicks, and they'll definitely want to be on my dick because I read all these books. Yeah, it's like, that's not how that works, bro. Just, I don't know. Like, just be like a quirked up white boy. Okay, Obama's not white, he's half white. You know what I mean? Just be like a quirked up fucking white boy, and then maybe you'll have a better chance that way. Just be like fucking genuine, because that's what most of these people want. Like, this strategy of trying to pick up girls by reading Marx and fucking Foucault in college is so fucking stupid, bro. Oh, God.
Rooms with like Democratic Party people who have been speaking about Mamdani, and they're like, he's a unique talent like Obama, and they view him like his energy.
You know, Obama made that call. Like, I'm so curious. I wish I was a fly on the wall.
Yeah, that call must have been, I think, because he didn't endorse him. He was like, if you need some advice, right here. Like, it's kind of blows my mind.
Conversely, Mamdani has a better overall pedigree in radical thought, and in that regard, seems like more of a true believer. How this?
I don't know. I feel like with the Obama call, maybe it's like Obama seeing these sort of winds change, politically speaking. And him deciding to capitulate there, I have no idea. Like, I would have also liked to have been a fly on a wall in that fucking conversation. Just be like, yo, I wonder what these guys talked about. I'm just a little curious.
Plays out in governance and policy, and the reality of the moment would be a much different subject altogether, but it's at least something to notice. With all that in mind, Mamdani was polling at less than 1% early on in the election cycle in a crowded field where it seemed to everyone that establishment Dem candidate and former governor Andrew Cuomo was the inevitable future mayor. Cuomo comes from a powerful New York political family. He was governor just a few years prior during COVID. His father was a governor in the 90s. His brother was a CNN correspondent. He had deep Democrat establishment.
Of course, we all know what happened to Andrew Cuomo. He resigned in disgrace because of all of the sexual impropriety that he was, broadly speaking, engaging in. And also, in the great words of Curtis Lewa, I know, slapping fannies and killing a bunch of grannies.
Ties, and 13 sexual misconduct cases, along with a scandal involving...
What if Obama fanboyed all over Zohran like Trump, but we just didn't see it? Obama doesn't seem like the type of guy to be like a fanboy type. Like, Trump fanboys because, like every other fascist, they are submissives, right? They're all fucking submissives. Liberals don't really do the same sort of like submissive bullshit to fucking power in comparison to fucking fascists, right? Like, fascists are all a bunch of cucked fucking losers who are willing to proselytize themselves to those that they see as being more effective, like, main characters and political fucking advocates.
Covering up the deaths of elderly during COVID, that probably should have landed him in jail, but powerful people always play by different rules. Also, still have to talk about Eric Adams. 60 was technically the incumbent mayor who eventually dropped out the race altogether. He is now, unsurprisingly, getting ready to join the Trump administration. So one thing to keep in mind is that Mamdani had a great opportunity once he got the ball rolling, considering who his competition was. While in some ways it's still highly improbable that a mayor with many of Mamdani's features would win, and we'll get to that later, it's also important to note that the situation was ripe for a populist spoiler like him to emerge. People were not excited for Cuomo, but he did represent stability from the establishment. The establishment sucks, but it's better than the nonsense the city experienced under Adams and the encroaching threat of Trumpism that Adams invited into the city. However, early on, Mamdani's affordability...
Yeah, but here's the thing. Like, okay, not that I'm disagreeing with FD here. 1000% agree with FD here. Andrew Cuomo, like, it's very stupid that people saw it that way. I don't even know. I'd have to question if people even saw it that way because, again, everyone looked at Andrew Cuomo as not really being an effective sort of advocate against Trump because people know of the relationships that Trump and also Cuomo used to have in the past. And generally speaking, most people would see that as like, ugh, this is not going to be very, very effective in terms of pushing back against Trump. And Zohran Mamdani obviously played into that quite effectively to make Andrew Cuomo look, well, as patently ridiculous as he always has been. And I mean, he also had help in a lot of that. Brad Lander did nothing more besides just constantly hammer Cuomo over and 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 over again. And I feel like that's a factor that's also being kind of ignored here was the role that Brad Lander played as basically being a kamikaze dive bomber going after fucking Andrew Cuomo's stupid looking head ass, saying consistently that, yeah, he's a rapist. He has these COVID scandals. You think he's going to fight against Trump? Fuck no, he's not going to fight against Trump. And I mean, literally, even on the campaign trail, fucking Andrew Cuomo was saying, like, you know, maybe we should reintroduce Trump. Maybe he's going to leave us alone if we not treat him as, like, this moral aberrance that we currently treat him as. in New York City, he was saying that where Trump has a approval rating of I think about 20% in the city of New York, and he's saying that in New York, like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, strategically speaking, it just doesn't make any fucking sense. It's nonsensical why he was doing that. No, he was saying that specifically for himself because he wanted to capitulate up front to Trump.
Affordability platform, his progressive inclinations, and his natural charisma set him apart, and he began to shine through and quickly became the front runner.
Habibi, could I get an egg and cheese on a roll with jalapeno?
When's the Zohran special coming up?
And this is, again, very similar to the rise of Obama. Obama won his federal Senate race in Chicago after his opponent dropped out due to a sex scandal himself. Here's some hilarious deep lore for non-Chicagoans who may not remember this story, but Obama's original opponent was this guy named Jack Ryan. Jack Ryan's ex is Jerry Ryan, aka the...
Yeah, Jack Ryan, from what I recall correctly, I don't know, we do have a resident Chicagoan here. Jack Ryan, from what I understand, Alex, real fucking piece of work. And what, fucking actress from Star Trek? That's pretty fucking cool, I'm not gonna lie.
That played 7 of 9 on Star Trek Voyager. They had divorced years before he ran for office, but it came out during the campaign that one of the reasons for that divorce was that Jack was into being cuckolded. He would take Jerry to sex clubs and pressure her to have sex with other men, to which she would always decline, but that didn't stop him from...
Holy... okay. Dude, he's a cuck. That's so fucking... It's Sneeko before Sneeko. It's white Sneeko. Jesus Christ. Bro was sitting in the fucking hotel cuck chair before it was even popular to sit in the hotel fucking cuck chair, dude.
Asking over and over and over again.
What further answer do you require? Oh, maybe some kind of justification for what you did. A little sense of guilt. Guilt is irrelevant.
This, of course, makes perfect sense if you actually understand Republicans and their sex practices, but it's not supposed to be out like that. So the Illinois Republicans replaced Jack Ryan with the OG of Republican Alan Keyes, who was destroyed by Obama to become one of only a few black senators in American history. But the similarities don't stop there. There's the exoticism of Mamdani's race and ethnic lineage, along with Obama's. Even their names give them this unique appeal to stereotypical liberals weaned on fetishistic identity politics. They were both highly charismatic, great speakers, charming smile.
Oh god, yeah, I fucking hate that shit when liberals do that. It's so stupid and annoying. It's like, Kwame Mamdani? Ooh, that's so hot and exotic. It's like weird, like fetishistic, like Orientalism, which is really fucking weird. I fucking hate that shit. It's like, yeah, bro, he's like, I don't know, like got Indian parents and they are from fucking Uganda, bro. Like, yeah, okay, your dude's name. He's got like a fucking African last name, okay, because he's from there, okay, like whatever, dude. Like, don't cream your pants over that. That's fucking weird, bro.
Have impressive wives that add a ton to their resources. It's a well-known thing at this point that Michelle Obama was the more talented and dynamic figure in that family, but Barack is the one that craved the power and attention. And Zohran Mamdani's wife, Rama Duwaji, played the back for most of his campaign. She's been getting a lot more attention since he's won, and she herself is a creative and illustrator, and the grapevine tells me that she was a guiding force behind his highly effective online campaign. Most significantly, though, is at least the veneer of progressive politics and left-wing populism that both Zohran and Obama ran on. When Obama ran for president, much like Zohran, his opponents were an establishment dim with deep political ties and a moderate Republican in the general election. But also he was dealing with the specter of George Bush Jr., for whom time seems to want to rewrite history for, but please remember, George W. Bush was awful in so many ways. Do not let him recoup his image.
Mr. President, are you up there? Go wait! Sir, there's a disaster in New Orleans. I'm reading Super Fudge.
So like Mamdani, Obama seemed like what the left was looking for at the time. But in retrospect, if we're honest, Obama's campaign was not the progressive populist wave that we were imagining in the moment. Obama ran on some populist positions, yes, such as figuring out free healthcare, ending wars, and fixing our financial systems. But overall, a lot
by the way, something which Obama admitted in a fucking podcast that, yeah, he could have passed Medicare for all, but he just didn't for some reason because, again, he's just a stooge for broader establishment fucking politics.
Like Mamdani, we'll get to this. He very much signaled a more moderate politics than we like to acknowledge in the moment because the vibes were so good that we didn't care. Obama on numerous occasions even compared himself to Ronald Reagan of all people. So that should have been an indication of how things would go. The main thing to consider about Obama as it pertains to Mamdani is that regardless of how he might have been perceived going into his presidency, Obama very quickly showed his cards once he was in. He very publicly filled his entire cabinet with establishment figures, people with significant ties to the financial industry, and lobbyists, along with any other type of narrative you can think of. More significantly is that he also very...
Yeah, again, that is the problem with Obama. So far, fucking... Zohran Mamdani hasn't really done that with a lot of his transition team. Didn't he recently appoint, like, Miss Rachel to be a part of his fucking transition team? Miss Rachel, a very well-known sort of, like, establishment sort of politician, right? Right? Like, I remember, like, the New York Post and a bunch of, like, these other, like, complete fucking freaks were having, like, a schizophrenic conniption about Miss Rachel being like appointed as part of Zohran Mamdani's fucking transition team. Like he also has fucking Lena Khan, who's a part of that and a part of his like transition team. And Lena Khan is, as we all know, a very, very particularly effective advocate for antitrust, who got pushed into the position as FTC chair by Elizabeth Warren. You know, forcing Joe Biden to adopt some of the, you know, more progressive advocates for effective, like, sort of political policy.
Quietly killed the progressive elements of his coalition that got him to that point. In an interview I did with Maurice Mitchell of the Working Families Party, he spoke to how there were a lot of legitimate progressives and organizers who worked with Obama and felt like there was a possibility for progressive action in his presidency, but recognized almost immediately that Obama set things in motion to neutralize their power within his administration.
With Barack Obama,
yeah, I think it was God, what was the name of the organization that Obama had, which organized a bunch of these more effective, not effective, like these more like progressive sort of advocates. It was like a Change or some shit, right? I don't remember exactly. I don't know, like the Americans in chat can fucking remind me, but Obama had this basically. In the Majority Report has also talked about this as well, but Obama basically had this like political organization that he used as you know, with a bunch of progressive advocates for fucking change, that basically were one of the main reasons as to why he was able to win the fucking presidency to begin with. And essentially, like, when he got into power, he completely snubbed them and let that progressive momentum completely fucking die off and dissipate into nothing, because, as we all know, Obama was never particularly interested in progressive advocacy in politics. He's always just been like a corporate stooge to power. He always has been.
The thing that I want people to note is that I take in critiques and they're helpful to me. I think I offer critiques. I actually think it's healthy if you actually care about a political project, a political actor, that you provide them with critiques. So I'm not hating. I'm not hating on the Obamas. Look, I felt that thing in my heart. I wanted him to be the organizer because I'm an organizer that was able to, you know, achieve this status. But we should account for what happened, especially because there may be another opportunity for somebody else who has a relationship to our movement or another Black person to be in those positions. And we want them to build on good things and not make the same mistakes, right? He put in people like Rahm Emanuel, whose main job was to beat back the movement. Shut up, sit in your place.
Yeah, exactly. This is the thing I was mentioning earlier. Fuck it. If you want to talk about like particularly odious fucking figures from, I believe from also Illinois, Alex, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, fucking Rahm Emanuel. I like the most recent thing that I remember from Rahm Emanuel is that he's one of like the little fucking freaks who is trying to throw trans people under the bus, saying that they're the main reason for as to why the fucking Democrats lost 2024. Just a complete fucking corrupt little creature of the swamp that exists from general sort of like democratic establishment politics. Rahm Emanuel is a piece of fucking shit. I can only imagine how terrible his mayoralship was. There, Alex, if he was mayor of Chicago after he left the Obama administration.
Right. We got it from here.
We got it. We got it. Thank you.
Are you a racist?
Right. Are you a racist? How dare you? Our nation's first Black president. How could you, right?
But to be fair to Obama, he was always very clear that he fundamentally believed in the American project and neoliberalism, and his presidency illustrated this signaling. We were in denial when he was running, and I think we are even more in denial about his presidency now. But the question is, should we expect a similar
I don't disagree with what FD is saying. The fact that Obama still has a broader sort of popularity within the Democratic Party is an indictment of the Democratic Party.
Term from Mamdani, whose sudden populist rise so closely mimics Obama's that Obama called him to offer him advice. But more importantly, not an endorsement. Let's track the same process with Mamdani.
I don't think so. I already don't really think so. I've not seen any indication, because people are trying to make the argument that, oh man, Zohran Mamdani is already capitulating on a bunch of different stuff. I've not really seen that bear out in terms of any evidence to suggest that Zohran Mamdani is already making a heel turn. Like, I don't know. That's nonsensical. It's a bunch of the exact same sort of like leftist fucking advocates who basically are doing the same sort of thing that I described earlier. Essentially taking a bunch of people who could be effective progressive political advocates and trying to funnel them into more right-leaning sort of doomeristic sort of movements, so then they can just engage with like their fucking Substacks, Patreons, and fucking podcasts. Again, Brianna Joy Gray, Jackson Hinkle, Jimmy Dore, and like socialist MMAs of the world. These motherfuckers. Yes, Laquan McDonald. I think I do have a sort of recollection of that, and it's because of Rahm Emanuel's. Didn't he like completely side with the Chicago PD in terms of the Laquan McDonald shooting? Even though that was again like another instance of like a dumbass, like a racially motivated shooting, being done by, American fucking police, something that is very, very fucking common. And Rahm Emanuel just decided to go along with that shit because he too is also a racist little fucking freak.
His first really viral moment was breaking with most of the field on Israel.
My belief in a universality in international law is also the same set of beliefs that led me to describe what's happening in Gaza as a genocide.
New York has the largest population of Jewish citizens in the world outside of Israel, and thus the Jewish vote is an important aspect of any political campaign. And because he's a shill, we saw Kumo jump out to immediately publicly fillet a country actively genociding people, and we saw Mamdani do his best to resist coming off anti-Israel so early in the contest. But also he was trying to be clear that he was not going to be another AIPAC-funded Democrat shill like almost all of them at this point. While the issue of Israel's genocide in Palestine is presented by the mainstream media and our government as a more complex issue, and indeed the full history of how we got here is complex, what's not actually that complex is...
Oh yeah, by the way, this was just a complete construction by Andrew Cuomo. Like, he has like nothing else to run on, so he decided to just bring up fucking Israel consistently, like at any point in time, because there is no policy that Cuomo basically has in comparison to Zohran Mamdani, so he pulls the exact same like conservative Republican tactic and just would prefer to do like stupid culture war fucking bullshit and nonsense and instead of talking about substance and policy, because he knows that in that sort of arena and that aspect, he stands basically no chance to Zohran Mamdani.
What's currently happening and what's right and wrong, and more importantly, this is no longer a niche opinion, as the public perception of Israel and its genocide has for a while now been that they're committing a genocide with our government's protection and support. So most
9% approval rating of Israel's actions amongst the Democratic Party, right? It is popular within the Democratic Party to not be a big fan of Israel.
Voters both on the left and the right are not in line with mainstream politicians like Cuomo. So Mamdani signaling to them a willingness to openly resist, which was and still is rare, was a good thing. However, while the viral moments in the highly social media driven campaign worked well, it needs to be understood that, again, unlike Obama, Mamdani had a huge grassroots based movement of very young voters getting very active for him all over the city. And this is where I maybe ran afoul of some folks by showing a bit of skepticism, because Mamdani had a lot of young progressives in New York very excited about him and hopeful for his chances. This culminated in a dominant win with the Democratic primary in New York. However, when the results of that win were analyzed, Mamdani was shown to have actually significantly lost the black vote in New York. Something that, if it happened again, might lead to him losing the general. However, this proved to just be another opportunity for Mamdani and his campaigners to show how talented they...
Yeah, but wasn't, again, that's mostly because he significantly won with the younger black vote, and because there's a lot more older black people in comparison to younger black people, that's why he ended up losing the overall black vote within the primary of New York, within the Democratic primary, right? That because of, broader sort of like general sort of divides, generationally speaking, yada yada yada, right? It's a little more complicated. It turns out a bunch of older black people are extremely fucking goddamn reactionary, and they're not going to vote for the Republicans, obviously, because they recognize that the Republican Party is incredibly fucking racist and just simply hates them for being black. Duh, obviously. And as a byproduct and a result of that, they are going to vote for the Democratic Party instead. Mostly like establishment sort of like Democratic candidates who are going to maintain the status quo, because, they also have the sort of desires and wants to maintain the sort of like hierarchical positions that they also have in terms of power structures as well, and see the Democrats as being as the vessels to be able to maintain those sort of positions, right? In their sort of like local communities and whatnot. In the first round, not in the rest. Yes, that's true. Alex.
Were, because by the time the final election results came in, Mamdani had considerably changed his outcome, and the black vote ended up being his most supportive base. Specifically, I want to point out black men, because people swear to God that we're secret Trump voters, Republicans, and this has never been true.
That's
it is so
true,
untrue.
yeah.
I'm going to leave that alone for now. We'll touch on this some other time. I got several.
Yeah, listen, black conservatives, they exist, but they are not very common. Like, they're a minority. They're very fucking loud online, but that's really about it. In terms of the most reliable sort of constituency that votes for the Democrats, it's always fucking black people. Why? Because they know that, listen, if they voted for the Republicans, that if the Republicans could, they would unironically put them all back in chains and picking fucking cotton in a plantation. Like, unironically, they fucking believe that. And I don't disagree with them. If the Republicans could do that, they fucking would.
The video's talking about it. This switch up is for a few reasons. First is because of how Mamdani campaigned. And as I said in a B-Sides video a month ago, it was clear that Mamdani had seen the mistakes of similar campaigns such as Bernie Sanders's in 2016 and 2020 and made very explicit inroads with connecting with black voters.
Tonight I have an extra ticket to the Wu-Tang Clan concert at Madison Square Garden.
And likely because of his area of studies, his love for hip-hop, and the fact he's been living in New York, he did not come off nearly as cringe or posery as another figure might have under the circumstances.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
I don't disagree with FD when he says that Bernie, because I do think that Bernie probably could have done a much better job trying to appeal to black voters in comparison, like, because we're talking about 2020 here specifically, like, because I do believe that 2020 was Bernie's, like, his campaign was just not as good within 2020 as in comparison to 2016, right? He could have done a lot more appealing to people, right? And the sort of reasoning for as to why I don't think I 100% agree with what FD Signifier is saying here is because the dynamics of a more local race like New York City, I mean, it still technically is local, even though it's like New York City, it's a huge city. It's still a local race, relatively speaking, in comparison to a national race, is the strategies that are being engaged with are significantly different. Bernie's strategy for a potential, like, electoral victory, from what I recall and what I understand, is that he wanted to get more non-voters, those low propensity voters, out to vote with a lot of his, like, general sort of populist progressive messaging, right? Because who is the largest voting bloc within the United States of America? Non-voters. That's who Bernie was mostly trying to get out to vote with his sort of standard, like, curmudgeon-y old Jewish coastal grandpa sort of shtick, talking about, like, why is everything shit in America currently? Because of the billionaires owning all the wealth of the bottom 50% of this country. The top 1% owns more wealth than the top 50, than the bottom 50% of the country. This cannot be allowed to stand. This is not going to produce equitable outcomes in the current system. There has to be something that's done about this. That's not going to be a message that necessarily sort of resonates with a lot of older black people, because, I don't know, they think progressivism is, like, scary or something. I'm being a little hyperbolic when I say that, right? Like, they don't like change because, again, they are reactionary and also, well, believe in a lot of conservative sort of beliefs as well. Just like, well, any other sort of, like, older fucking demographic, right? And because with young black people, Bernie swept, right? Like, young black
Amazing. Amazing. Amazing.
Thank you, Jesse Lee Peterson. With younger black people, Bernie swept with them. Younger black people loved what Bernie was basically putting on the fucking table, right? And it again, it's the same, like, generational divide, which I assume, like, FD Signifier has probably acknowledged is also a thing as well, right? Like, let's not be ridiculous here. But it turns out, like, I don't know, like, the Jim Clyburns of the world, it couldn't be sort of swayed, or, like, Bernie didn't necessarily put in any of the necessary work or much effort at all in trying to sort of assuage him, to try to support him in his campaign in comparison to supporting Joe Biden with, again, Barack Obama pulling some strings to assemble the centrist Voltron that ultimately ended up defeating Bernie during 2020. And you can have criticisms of the Bernie campaign there in that particular instance, where it's like, you probably should have put in some effort to try to appeal to some of these people, or at least try to counteract the centrist Voltron instead of just like kind of remaining silent about the whole situation, which Bernie ultimately did, and tried to, I don't know, carry the momentum that he had in 2020 in before Super Tuesday to try to get a victory, but ultimately didn't really end up working out, and it's because of some strategic blunders that Bernie Sanders' campaign made during that election. The only time I generally hear black people speak out against the left is liberal racism, when it's people speaking for them, saying what's best for them without them having a say. Oh, 1000%. I think like FD Signifier also says a lot of the exact same shit, which I can generally speaking like agree with. Like, there's a lot of like liberals within the Democratic Party who will do like, it's like the blue MAGA equivalent bullshit, where they'll just be like, why aren't these uppity fucking goddamn progressive blacks voting for our fucking candidate? It must be because they're just a bunch of stupid delusional morons who just want to have Trump and the Republicans win or something. It's like, that's not the case, man. That's fucking ridiculous. It's a dog shit candidate, and nobody wants to go out and fucking vote for them. That's why, you dumbass. Not because, like, I don't know, like they're hitting certain identifying sort of monikers or whatever. It's because people want something tangible now out of their fucking politicians, and not just a bunch of namby-pamby, pimbly-wimbly nonsense from a bunch of people, and they want, like, something real and tangible to latch onto, to, I don't know, have some kind of aspiration and belief and hope towards. Because again, the biggest problem with the Democrats is the fact that they just believe in absolutely nothing.
Pleasure.
Wow.
It's a real pleasure.
At a Wu-Tang show. But I think what it really comes down to is the fact that he ran on a platform of affordability and being focused on providing actual solutions to normal Americans, which is something that neither of the major parties seem to want to do these days. And lastly, it didn't help that Kumo and to a lesser extent, Eric Adams both ran what amounts to racist fear-mongering campaigns, where they spent more time calling Mamdani an anti-Semitic evil communist than presenting any type of attractive plan for what they were going to do.
This shit was fucking psychotic, by the way. The fact that fucking Cuomo did this shit was actually fucking crazy.
To do for the city. The only thing they were banking on, much like Kamala Harris in the 2024 election, was maintenance of the status quo, which most people understood was awful. But this brings us to the more concerning areas that we need to talk about with Mamdani, how him being labeled and seen as this progressive figure is ultimately dangerous for real leftists and progressive movements, but at the same time is an opportunity we really can't pass up. Part 2, what should we expect from Mamdani? While Mamdani is a democratic socialist and has been smeared by mainstream media as a communist and some type of scary radical, and at the same time, a lot of leftists, especially more moderate leftists, have adopted Mamdani as a symbol of progress and a legitimate win for the actual left in this country and not the Democrat or liberal left. So oddly, what we have is two very different political factions saying almost the same thing about a politician, which is rare. Obama, Biden, and Kamala Harris were also smeared as too far left and communists, etc. Minnesota! But no halfway knowledgeable leftists looked at Biden, Obama, or Kamala as one of their own, which makes sense. But
yeah, it's the standard fucking Republican tactic. Like, if you're slightly left of, like, I don't know, fucking Mussolini or whatever, they're just gonna call you a communist, which is obviously fucking ridiculous. But then again, you shouldn't really listen to a lot of those fucking criticisms, but the Democrats take those criticisms to heart, specifically neoliberal. The Democrats take those criticisms to heart for some reason, because, again, for them it's all about maintenance of the exact same sort of hierarchies and systems of control and power, because they accept a lot of the same money from those exact same, well, bourgeois donors who want to also maintain that exact same status quo.
How sensible is it to claim Mamdani as a real leftist in the same circumstance? The fact is, Mamdani has done about as much as he can to distance himself from that label, and his policies, while progressive, aren't necessarily socialist policies. The sad reality is that Mamdani's platform and political goals seem radical and extreme in a country that's been ruled by neoliberal fascists for around 50 years. I love the memes where, you know,
I mean, here's the thing, right? Like, I don't think anyone's really expecting, like, Zohran Mamdani to be the vanguardist sort of revolutionary who's going to overthrow the Winter Palace of America. Like, I don't think anyone's coming away with that expectation. Like, people are gonna meme about it, right? Like, because it's funny, right? It's funny, like, seeing the, I don't know, the Kuomintang retreating in Staten Island. Meanwhile, the Maoist Republic, Socialist Republic of Zohran Mamdani is the ascended power within the rest of New York. Like that's just, I mean, those are funny memes and everything, but nobody's really coming away with the expectation of saying that, yeah, Zohran Mamdani is like, he's the guy who's going to, I don't know, overthrow the current bourgeois capitalist system that we find ourselves under in order to basically, I don't know, usher in a socialist fucking utopia. I don't think nobody's fucking saying that. Like, I've not really seen anyone say that.
Wins memes. I love the memes, but I also have come to understand that memes are just, some people don't get the joke.
Yeah, part of the reason that I was writing so hard for was because New York City is one of the cities where it's like, okay, directly depending on who you put in as mayor, they have so much real power. And it's like there's a very real impact to who gets in there. So it's like I can't even pretend to be anti-electoral in this sense, because it's going to be so direct in so many little ways. I kept reiterating, and people get mad at me where they're like, oh, well, isn't it great that he's at least putting the name of socialism out there? I'm like, well, this isn't socialism. Like, none of this is socialism. And it's like I have to clarify, it's like this is at best a social. He's just running some I kept saying good municipal policies.
It's all rebranding. That's all it is. It's just a branding exercise. I mean, the joke of having all these options, right? The luxury of,
I mean, again, it's one of those things where it really depends, right, on how it's done. Like with the anecdote that I mentioned earlier with my good childhood friend, he unironically has talked about how he likes a lot of China's policies in terms of how China utilizes state power in order to rein in a lot of the more so corporations that operate within China and how they use state power. And he's talked about how it's socialism. Now, obviously, any learned Marxist or socialist out there knows that China is not a socialist state. It's not a proletarian state. They have not gone through any of the necessary steps in order to begin the transitions from socialism, well, the lower stages of fucking socialism into communism. That's nonsensical. Essentially, China is also a social democracy, but I like the sort of term of social autocracy, right? They use their state power in order to run a socially democratic sort of system. The welfare state's not exactly 100% the same, but it's kind of basically like that, using a lot of state power in order to implement regulations upon a lot of the corporations in order to make sure that they stay in line with the goals of the state, right? That's why I say it's more of a social autocracy, right? It's inherently authoritarian, the power structure there. Like anything truly gets voted for in China, 100% vote pool for the same president each time. I mean, it's an obvious authoritarian fucking structure, Zane. We can all definitely agree on that, right? But to talk about if we're talking about social and material conditions on the ground, it is a significant improvement, of course, in comparison to America, right? Obviously, right? But my buddy has talked about how he sees that as a socialist system. So you have to be very careful with that, because unironically, a lot of people within America, in the West in general, in terms of political education, are basically on the bottom floor. There is very little political education and civic education, because that's more or less by design from a lot of these nation states in power, because unfortunately, if you make the proletariat aware of the current civic structures that they are currently being governed by, they're going to have a lot of problems and criticisms, and that's not going to be necessarily conducive to the nation state to be able to maintain its inherent sort of power structure. It can be socialist, depends on the base that it stands on. Without the sort of proletarian sort of control, with the dictatorship of the proletariat, I would say, generally speaking, no. I guess this is me sort of more being an orthodox Marxist in this particular instance, saying, but the main distinction for what makes a socialist state is control and ownership of the means of production by the proletariat. Specifically, it's all about addressing that main fundamental sort of hierarchy. And a lot of these states that are socially democratic or pretend to be democratic socialist or socialist in general don't address those particular issues, which is why I say they're like they're not really socialist. They're more so like dem soc in particular, which is still fine. Like the outcomes there are still preferable in comparison to the laissez-faire capitalistic systems that we find ourselves under right now with a basically collapsing economy, but I digress. To say that it is socialist is not exactly accurate, right? Like Marx would just be like, this is not like socialist whatsoever. But we're going on a little bit of a tangent here. Right. I was talking about the sort of like dangers of calling these things like socialist, because I do agree there is a certain danger in calling these things socialist, because it's not addressing the fundamental relationships between the bourgeois and the proletariat, but also like kind of getting these ideas into the main cultural zeitgeist of your sort of politically class unconscious sort of Americans. It's a step. It's a good step. It's a way sort of forward. That's what I'm talking about as the base. The base of China's system is not a democracy, right? But to say that it's an inherently that the taking over of the means of production within the transitionary steps from socialism to communism is done democratically is not exactly sort of accurate. Not 100%, because I mean, depending on how it's done, through generally speaking, it's going to have to be through sort of like a revolutionary sort of uprising, because again, the bourgeois is not going to let go of power quietly in the night, because currently the hierarchy, the system of self-control that they currently have the levers of power on, is essentially beneficial to them specifically. Like it's obviously it's dependent, it's a little complicated, yada yada yada. Again, like we could talk about the sort of like minutia and sort of details of how these systems basically work. In terms of like the sort of like orthodox like sort of Marxist systems. But if we want to like, I don't know, put this in like purely sort of like democratic means, yes, if we're talking about the majority will of the people, the dictatorship of the proletariat, I guess technically speaking, can be democratic in that sort of like sense, even though like an authoritarian system is technically speaking being implemented in order to take power away from the current minority, that being, well, the bourgeois, the rich, the politicians, which also help maintain the power structures of the rich, is essentially being taken away from that minority and is being given into the hands of the majority, kind of a deal, right? Like, if people could vote out rich people, they probably would, right? Like it would happen, which is why it doesn't really happen, right? It's a little silly, right? Not silly. It's a little complicated, right? But we're kind of going off on a tangent here, right? Getting these sort of like cultural idea of what socialism is supposed to mean, and that is like more effective, like municipal sort of governance. And equating that might not necessarily, it just really depends on how it's done. These sort of like democratic majority and will of the people is essentially being acted upon and is the sort of main thing that's being agreed to. is something that can be, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. I do agree with this, where it can be basically seen as like, oh, it's a good thing that people are seeing this, even though it's like not 100% like actual sort of socialism or whatever. It can be like a good thing because people are now equating this with significantly sort of a better state policy in order to help rein in the out-of-control sort of structures of power that currently exist, to at least have some form of regulation. But in reality, it's not actual real socialism because those sort of structures of power are not being inherently dismantled, right? Like, it's a complicated, like, sort of balancing act, and a sort of step forward in bringing forth like some form of class consciousness in a population that has effectively been propagandized to for the past like 75 years of being against their own active class interests. It's a discussion that I certainly think is warranted to have, and it's one of those things where I think in my mind it's a sort of like difficult sort of balancing act, because I mean, again, if you talk about like dictatorship of the proletariat, you be explicitly Marxist about this, that's going to be a turnoff to most people, and that's not going to sell really well politically.
Of the United States, they have two capitalist parties, right? All that stuff is very true. It's all about branding. I mean, Glenn Ford talked about this, a great late Glenn Ford, Black Agenda Report, where they're able to be the more efficient evil because we do give them grace, right? Because they're not abhorrent monsters that we have to turn away from or immediately recognize as white supremacists, but they uphold white supremacy. They uphold the status quo. Kwame Ture told us about, the pitfalls of liberalism, and these are the people that we have to recognize are our enemies, and they already chose a side. Why are we pretending otherwise, right?
I mean, this is true. I don't disagree with this, but like, that's going to be really hard to sell politically, right? Like, I don't disagree with this assessment. It's just like selling that to the general sort of population that's a tough sell. That's a really, really tough sell.
But again, it's all marketing. It's all to make us more comfortable and think that we're progressing somewhere, that we're moving forward, right? That we're somehow, we haven't claimed victory, but we're winning breadcrumbs. But where are those breadcrumbs leading us to?
Americans have gotten so used to the government being subservient to oligarchs and the rich that we've somehow been convinced that the government serving regular people directly is socialism. Rent freezes and affordability isn't socialism. It's regulation of what is still very much a free market. The only seemingly socialist plans Mamdani has are the city bus and grocery programs that he's hoping to have.
To that end, you propose city-run grocery stores, fare-free public transit.
A network of municipal-run grocery stores, one in each borough, so 5 in total, would cost the city $60 million. The city is already set to spend more than $140 million subsidizing corporate supermarket chains without any guarantee of affordability from that subsidy.
And if we're realistic, those are probably two plans that are more likely to fail than his others. This is a really important thing for leftists of any ilk to keep in mind, as it represents an attack on the left from both sides. On the more obvious end, if Mamdani fails, or to be realistic, whenever he does inevitably fail at something, it will be presented in the cultural zeitgeist as a failure of leftist ideology as a whole, regardless of what favor of left you abide by. We're all just being...
But yeah, like, FD is 1000% correct on this. The media will 1000% run on this and see like, look at this fucking complete failure here by Zohran Mamdani. This is just not socialism working whatsoever. Now, even though, like you're saying, Boy Meets Mini, like Bill Ackman and his buddies are going to spend millions of dollars in order to basically cause as many disruptions as possible to Zohran's sort of, not effective, but like a policy platform.
Presented by Mamdani on the main stage right now. Whatever he does is a reflection on us. It's hard enough to have folks differentiate the left from liberals. Now that someone is ostensibly a leftist is in office, that differentiation is going to be even harder for people. However, more insidiously is the fact that Mamdani represents the left while not actually needing to govern as a socialist or Marxist, etc. This gives Mamdani a lot of power that can be used to ultimately further marginalize actual leftist ideology in this country, whether accidentally or purposely. For example, among many red flags that have popped up around him thus far, the biggest has been his capitulation to the NYPD.
Police have a critical role to play in creating public safety.
And the maintenance of Jessica Tisch, who was...
So this is where I'm probably going to not 100% agree with FD here. Again, I've talked about this before, but picking a fight with the NYPD, you need to have a very concrete fucking plan to go after the NYPD. Yeah, this is a bit of a reach here by FD Signifier, right? Like I mentioned earlier before, in this video specifically, to basically keep Jessica Tisch is a compromise. This is a compromise. This is how politics work. Even Lenin agreed that he has to, that if you're a fucking socialist within the United Kingdom, you should support the fucking Labour Party despite the fact that they are a bourgeois liberal party, right? So, at this point, it becomes like a sort of compromise sort of position. Zohran Mamdani has talked about before how he likes Jessica Tisch currently being in power because of a lot of the anti-corruption work that she did to remove a lot of Eric Adams' stooges that were currently put in places of power within the NYPD as a sort of demand from Donald Trump specifically to keep them in power for the sort of desire that Eric Adams had to basically have the pardon for his corruption charges basically be given to him by the President of the United States, or whenever Trump would basically get back into power, right? It's a sort of play there by Eric Adams to essentially get some form of benefit politically for himself. That's why Zohran Mamdani likes Jessica Tisch being in power, despite the fact that, yes, Jessica Tisch is a insane fucking Zionist and is really, really fucking bad. She is not a good fucking person, right? Like, generally speaking, she has said some insane shit in the fucking past about the left, about Palestinian emancipation, about like anti-Zionists, yada yada yada. She is a fucking psychopath, right? I totally fucking agree with that. If you're going after the NYPD, which, like I said before, kidnapped fucking Bill de Blasio's fucking daughter after Bill de Blasio did something that they didn't fucking like, to go after and regulate them specifically, you need to be very calculated and incredibly fucking careful, right? And you have to stay within their good graces very often because of just the ridiculous amount of power that has been given to them throughout the past 30 years. Yeah, unironically, Boy Meets Minnie, the NYPD could potentially try to fucking deport him, right? They are sympathetic to the Trump administration, right? They do not enforce the city sanctuary laws and just let ICE sort of gallivant about and just randomly arrest people illegally, mind you, and just let the federal government and ICE just do whatever they want. This is what compromise within politics looks like. Because, again, Zohran Mamdani is focusing more on his affordability agenda, more so than the NYPD. He has, like, again, the sort of actual goals of what defund the police was supposed to be, and that is, again, a reallocation of resources from, you know, parts of police departments to basically work on other stuff besides just, well, jailing a bunch of fucking people who are, generally speaking, innocent of, well, a bunch of differing crimes, right? Like, that's the sort of goal that Zohran Mamdani is essentially having here, instead of just doing the sort of raw lefty thing of just being like, yeah, just, you know, completely defund and destroy the NYPD. Rah, like, we're gonna destroy the NYPD because we hate the NYPD. I'm a leftist, yada yada yada. It's like, that's not gonna work, man. Like, that's gonna be a complete disaster.
An open Zionist and has Zionist ties as a chief of police. Now, I don't personally reasonably expect, based on the reality of the situation, that Mamdani is going to purge the entire New York government of Zionist elements in a city like New York. That's just not a realistic outcome. But this particular role is something he could have had more control over, and his decision not to remove her is concerning. Also, while the NYPD is incredibly powerful, I don't think he had to apologize to him on the way to winning the election. I don't think it was necessary.
My statements in 2020.
I mean, that can be quibbled about. Like, yeah, like, capitulating there is sure. Like, I don't think he probably should have apologized either for a lot of the statements. But, again, like, he really wants to stay in the good graces of the NYPD because they can really fuck with him in really fucking terrible ways, right? Yeah, like, I don't disagree with you there, Boy Meets Minnie. Yeah, he doesn't have that leverage right now. FD. I was blanking there a little bit. It's a little late. But yeah, exactly. Like, there's just, he doesn't, like, he's still the mayor-elect, again, I think what's going to be more effective, to be quite honest, yeah, it is dumb how the media is pressing him on this, and him owning up to it again does, it makes him look like a fucking coward, like he's fucking capitulating. But what is he going to do, right? He doesn't have the political capital in order to like start swinging his dick around. Now, if his policies get implemented and he starts having political wins, then he has the political capital and potential will to essentially start being able to start, actually having an effect on the NYPD. Because again, what are you going to do? Like, what, you're going to go against the highly popular mayor of New York City who's essentially being like, well, fucking what, you're going to like fuck with me? Considering how high my approval rating is right now because of my highly successful fucking policies. What's the NYPD going to do in that instance? Zohran Mamdani now currently has leverage politically over them, right? That's how it works, because he's not... This is the overly sort of cynical stuff that I've been sort of talking about here, specifically with a lot of the elements of the left for Zohran Mamdani, is specifically on a lot of his policies and the capitulation seemingly that he's doing to the NYPD. He's not really in a position right now to start picking a fight with the NYPD. Same thing with, again, him not supporting like Che Osei in his attempt to challenge Hakeem Jeffries. Why pick a fight that you just don't have to? Just stay out of it. He's still the mayor-elect. He needs more political capital if he wants to be able to start swinging his dick around and being the fucking alpha Chad in the fucking goddamn room. He needs political wins first before he can start throwing his weight around. Very, very fucking important, right? He's already staking quite a lot of potential political capital on being able to implement his policies right now. And I think he's going to do more stuff, sort of like politically speaking, in terms of having more sway in terms of a lot of like House elections and whatnot, if his agenda gets implemented and is successfully implemented, which he doesn't have a lot of time to do. So it's more important that he focuses on that specifically, and picking a fight with people like Hakeem Jeffries, people within the Democratic sort of establishment, people within the NYPD, that's not going to be very effective at the moment. Like, it's only going to make his job significantly more difficult. So again, very important to be strategic in this particular moment.
Were ones made amidst a frustration that many New Yorkers held at the murder of George Floyd. The campaign that I am asking New Yorkers to consider is one that has been clear on its public safety approach. It's one that speaks about a desire to work with police officers.
And then on top of this, there's rumors about him and AOC holding back other progressive candidates, among other things. Coming back after the fact here to say that this was not a rumor, this ended up being actual fact. While it was unlikely that Osei would have ever beat Jeffries, it still kind of shows Mamdani to be more of a politician than any type of revolutionary.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the job that he was running for, right? Like, because again, like, I don't think that Che Osei was probably going to win that in, like, sort of, like, Hakeem Jeffries' district, I believe, is one of the few majority black districts within New York and within sort of the America. Jesus, I was blanking there for a second. Jesus. Within America, right? One of the few majority black districts that does exist within America. And that's going to be predominantly sort of populated with a lot more older black people, and someone like Che Osei is not going to really resonate with them specifically. I don't know, like, probably people online are saying that Mamdani is a revolutionary. I don't think most people have ever really been under this sort of idea that people thought that Zohran Mamdani was a revolutionary running for, I don't know, the mayor of New York City. Like, I don't think so.
Look into all the details, and he has since tried to plead his case as to why he thinks that was a good idea. I don't really feel him on this explanation, but at the end of the day, it's him being a politician, and that's kind of the whole point I'm trying to make here. This is important to keep in mind because Mamdani is legitimately a paradox. He represents both a huge win for the left and in the world of electoralism, but that fundamentally is not necessarily a win. He also presents a proof of concept on electoral politics, having the capacity to shift toward populist, anti-capitalist, and pro-working class centered appeals, and as flawed as it may be, reintroducing the concept of socialism to public discourse at a large scale is a huge deal and would be a big benefit to the actual people of New York that would benefit benefit from his policies. As I've spoken to in a few other...
I mean, again, like the thing that I mentioned earlier, Lenin himself also said that socialists should support bourgeois liberal parties if there is no sort of socialist alternative, to make sure that reactionary capitalist forces are basically seen as not like basically slowed down and are not put within positions of power. Again, he said himself that you should support the Labour Party within Great Britain, within the UK, despite the fact that they are just a bourgeois liberal party. It's just like, in comparison to what is currently available right now, you need to also sometimes operate with a bit of compromise. This is politics. Like, what ultimately matters in politics is being able to get power to put your agenda in place.
Election-centered videos this year, the left is simultaneously way far behind in our power in this country, while also being more visible, more organized, and more powerful than we've ever been since probably the 70s. Nixon, COINTELPRO, J. Edgar Hoover, and the Cold War put the American left on life support by the mid-70s, and Reagan finished the job by the early 80s and put into motion a generation of misinformation, counterinsurgency, and a distorted history to ensure that many Americans would always perceive anything left of liberalism as evil or foolish.
I'm talking about like in the like 1920s and 30s here, Boy Meets Mini. Like, I'm not talking about like modern day like the Labour Party. I mean, like Britain's fucking basically cooked. It's basically dead.
The point where I assure you there'll be people in the comments saying stuff like, how are you a socialist yet you make money on YouTube? Please, they're coming.
Stay with me now.
They probably didn't get to this point. They're going to be there. Ironically, I think the wave of Obama and his subsequent failure sparked a few embers for those like myself who were left inclined but didn't really have the baseline knowledge to understand the philosophies behind the left, to pursue that and
go deeper.
And that wave that's been going on for a good decade plus now has resulted in 2 socialist mayors in America. Take that for what you will, but the fact that I can joke about this, about the...
is he talking about India Walton, or is he talking about Katie Wilson of Seattle? Because she's also a socialist, I would say, right? Like, I mean, Zohran Mamdani is certainly some brand or flavor of, like, democratic socialist. I 1000% agree with that, you know, in line with, well, Martin Luther King Jr. Probably same with, like, Katie Wilson as well. Like, she has also, like, probably... I don't know as much about like Katie Wilson in Seattle as much. I don't know, like they're really the only person who'd probably done more segments in that in particular would probably be Vosh, considering the fact that he lives in Seattle and canvassed and probably worked with that campaign through Progressive Victory to get Katie Wilson in power. But I digress. That's Seattle. She's very similar to Zohran Mamdani, also, again, democratic sort of socialist. Like, again, we can quibble about, like, the degree of, like, socialism, yada, yada, yada. You know, it's a complete fucking shit show, obviously.
Predictable, uneducated responses from people about socialism is indicative of a broader cultural movement than it was just a few years ago. A lot of that comes from social media, but it's bleeding into normie media and now legitimately into governance. But it is moving, and not just online, in real life. But understand, Mamdani doesn't get credit for that. You do. But that's also the thing we have to guard from. We have to resist the stand moment that is developing behind him. We have to resist...
I don't disagree with, like, again, stand culture, but I don't know how effective that's necessarily going to be right now in general sort of broader American politics, right? You need the guy with the main character energy and syndrome to be able to get into power, because that's like the sort of main thing that is effective right now in American politics. Like, if you had a socialist that's like running, you know, for a particular office or whatever, just yammering on about fucking progressive policy, are they going to win? Probably not, right? Yeah, 1000. Well, that's the thing, Boy Meets Mini. Because of Trump bringing in main character syndrome, having the fucking main character energy and vibe and charisma and fucking riz, because of, again, things that I've talked about on this channel before, the death of critical thinking and education that has been happening throughout the past 40 years within American fucking politics, right? Yeah, it wasn't the first. Yeah, Reagan as well. That's true. Point Meets Mini. Like, because of the death of subjectivity, critical thinking, and education within America, civic education is basically fucking dead in America. It has made it such that the dude with the best vibe and energy is the main guy who's going to win. You know, You can mention the policy and talk about the policy. That's always good. That's never a bad thing. But unfortunately, the main thing that's going to get into power is the guy with the fucking energy, the guy with the riz, the guy with the big dick, the dude who's basically got the main sort of energy to carry that into a victory.
Stand culture in general, but that's another video. And the thing that makes me realize that this is very much possible is that I chose my guests for this video representing what I thought were different views of Mamdani because I thought they would be more different. But I was very pleasantly surprised to see that they weren't as different as I had initially thought. We are not nearly as polarized among the left as we often tend to think we are. Contradictions within the political reality we're in, where we don't have to have the, leftist infighting TM over stuff that is obviously true in two senses.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And so, like,
even I had moments like this where I'll think about, like, someone be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, so far, like, all the Breonna Joy Grays and socialist MMAs of the world are not being very effective right now in their stupid propaganda to try to take down Zohran Mamdani.
It's fine to critique Zohran Mamdani, and in the moment someone does critique Zohran Mamdani, they're like, how? Like, I do feel that, like, the TM leftist infighting is kind of a necessity. It's like part of how it functions is this like consistent, because as long as it doesn't become a thing that like bogs you down from doing action, like it's good to sit here in all of this like contradiction. And I think that like, yeah, I find it a lot of these platform issues, a lot of these things, I don't think he's selling a river, but you can also acknowledge the fact that like, yeah, there's these parts where he's clearly doing the politician bit. He has good intentions. The buses might happen. You can watch the way that he's code switched about Israel. You can watch the way that he's code switched about safety. Like you can see it all in there. And I like, it's like,
we're looking at a Democratic Party who just capitulated to Donald Trump and his shutdown. And I grew up on welfare. I grew up on WIC and all these things. Like that was my childhood. That's what we needed to live. This wasn't like, this isn't something that I read in a book. This isn't something that I hear secondhand. This was my childhood. I don't really talk about my life like that because while I know that a lot of people hearing of it would either relate to it or won't be able to relate to it, I still think that I was beyond privilege. And yet I'm still working class. I'm still crazy in debt, student loans, all these things, right? Living paycheck to paycheck, like literally living paycheck to paycheck. And because of that,
student loans,
not in spite of it, but because of that, I know that we need to do more than what the Democratic Party is providing and what DSA is attempting to sell us. Because yes, you're right. I want Mamdani's platform, his agenda to be completed to the fullest. It's not, we all know this, it's not the subline to ourselves, but even the crumbs will benefit people, in situations that I grew up in, situations that I'm still sort of in, to be honest with you, as uncomfortable as it makes me to this day. The issue is that
but again, it's like is being said here, you need a starting point. You have to give people that hope, so then they are interested in engaging and being able to push for further, which is why I think Zohran is as important as he is, and being overly cynical about that specifically, and not being able to sort of like not capitulate, but compromise on that in order to be able to celebrate the wins that, yeah, we all know are not going to be necessarily enough, and that more needs to be done, blah, 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 blah. We all know this. Like, there needs to be radical fucking change, and everyone wants that fucking radical change. Everyone acknowledges this. We all agree on this. Duh, very obviously. But, again, we have to acknowledge the wins, no matter how big or how small they may be. It is important to be like, yeah, this is a good thing, right? So then you don't come off as like this, I don't know, fucking prude and like stooge and all this fucking shit. Like that's how fascists fucking win. Not wanting to participate, not having any fucking hope. That is how they ultimately win. The lack of hope in Modi's opposition is why Modi still has an iron grip on India, despite his bad economic plus fascist policies. Exactly. Like, it's a good thing to have belief in someone. Not so much so that you obviously deteriorate into stand culture, right? Like, obviously, idol worship is obviously bad for a lot of reasons. It leads to rather blinkered critical thinking ability, right? We can all agree on that. But it is incredibly important to have hope for a better tomorrow. And that is what Zohran Mamdani can potentially bring to the table. That is a hope for a better tomorrow.
This is a snake oil salesman. The problem isn't what he's, pitching, it's him, right? And what he represents. And the allure of saying, hey, we got the crumbs. Crumbs, most often than not, crumbs that radicals, communists, socialists, anarchists died for.
Everyone I talk to recognize the value of his platform and the value of what he wants to accomplish in New York for New Yorkers and the working class. They recognize the need to hold him accountable and be critical of the gap between where he is and where we actually want to go. And they're all actively doing real life work. Because Mamdani is a paradox, we have to be paradoxical too. We have to have the capacity to see the limitations in his way, but also root for the results he's seeking that benefit the people. We have to both use his branding as an opportunity to introduce leftist politics to more people as we chip away at 50 years of misinformation, but also guard against him and or the Democratic Party co-opting leftist ideology to recuperate it into the status quo. Again, never forget that after the grand uprisings of 2020, after people marched and burned down stores and we shouted, defund the police, they actually increased police funding in cities across the country, mostly Democratic cities, including the former Democratic president. So yes, once again, what I'm getting at is that we have to learn from the mistakes people my age and older made with Barack Obama. And with that, I have just 3 more major keys that I want to present to you all. Number 1, do not give Mamdani a pass because he's dealing with overt racism from Democrats and Republicans. Everybody's being really racist to Mamdani right now, including black people. Acknowledging that this will happen and that it will be blatant and ridiculous along with covert and dog whistling, that is something we should do. We must and should contend with this when it's encountered. Still, it's important not to allow the fact that Mamdani is going to face racism to lower your standards on what should be expected of his position. This was a grievous mistake made with Obama. When Barack Obama became president, it really triggered the beginnings of what would eventually become Trumpism. I think a lot of black folks who should have known better turned off their critical faculties to the point that we gave him way too much grace. By the end of his presidency, black people were supporting the war in Iraq. It was a complete failure on so many levels. And the reason we failed to address it is because while he was in office, he was constantly being bombarded with gross racist ridicule. It seemed wrong under the circumstances to criticize him at the same time. It's the epitome of—
Yeah, dude, it's like all the stupid, like, dumbass, like, liberal Orientalism, like, stupid, annoying fucking, stupid, like, liberal racism that exists. It's so fucking annoying, dude. I hate that shit. And obviously, like, like every fucking Zionist under the fucking sun is, I don't know, basically doing racist memes and caricatures of Zohran Mamdani consistently. Like, honestly, like, you should look at those people and just make fun of them, call them the fucking losers that they are.
Of the failure of identity politics as a core aspect of one's political analysis. So be better here. Know that Mamdani will be subject to constant racism from here on, but also don't allow that to distract you from being critical when he earns that criticism. Again, we will have to engage with 2 truths at once. 2, pay attention to whom he empowers and where he compromises and how he compromises. We already have Tish as one red flag. There will probably be others. We need to be ready on his head each time we see one. In the same vein, to give credit where credit is due, Mamdani also appointed Dr. Derek Hamilton to his Transition Committee on Economic Development and Workforce Development. I'll link the video that Dr. Jared Ball made about it already, but to point out why this is kind of a cool thing, Dr. Derek Hamilton wrote the intro to Dr. Ball's book, The Myth of Black Buying Power, which is one of the more important books I think a lot of black folks need to read, which seeks to help dispel the ideology that buying power and black excellence and black millionaires and billionaires is what black people need to save themselves.
I'd love us to get a conversation.
That is a philosophy that is very dominant and preeminent in a lot of black political spaces that needs to be done away with. And having someone who is amenable to that belief system be put in such an important role is probably the most radical thing he's done so far, which I want to be clear, doesn't mean there's nothing to worry about. It just means we need to continue to be critical and paying attention to everything that he's doing with the power that he's been imbued with.
I already mentioned the whole thing with Jessica Tisch specifically. Again, why currently pick a fight with the NYPD right now? He's still, again, the mayor-elect of New York. The NYPD is one of the most powerful gangs within the United States of America, which has institutionalized power. Like, yeah, exactly, Boy Meets Smitty. We should wait until he, quote-unquote, levels up and basically has political capital under his sort of belt before he can take on an institution that is as large and as powerful as the NYPD, right? Like, that's what needs to happen. Like I said before, he's probably way more focused on the fight that's going to happen for him to implement his agenda of free busing, the grocery store stuff, his sort of taxing policy that he also wants to put in, the fights that he's probably going to have in Albany with Kathy Hochul. Like, she's looking to capitulate for the time being. Like, he has leverage there in that particular situation, but again, anything can happen right now. It's way more important to, again, have him get some political fucking victories before taking on something as large as the NYPD, right? Because, again, he's going to need a lot of people on his side if he's going to be able to take on something as large and as powerful as the NYPD, but basically an institutionalized gang within America.
Same with Obama. He purposely began to run to a centrist neoliberal position pretty much the day after he came into power, and it should have been clear as day that that's where things would go from there on. But we didn't want to hear it. We wanted.
But Zohran Mamdani, I don't like. He's not like. There's been so far no indication that he's really doing the same.
The imagination that we've created for ourselves that he ran on. Further, the biggest failure of Obama was not going far enough on the handful of populist leftist things that he ran on. For example, he didn't go far enough in the Affordable Health Care Act when he had the power to do so. Obama had a filibuster-proof majority for a calendar year, but didn't get the ACA done until a few months after that filibuster-proof status was gone. And he had started capitulating on a real universal health care plan before then. What we ended up with was, by Obama's words, based on the Republican health care plan, first introduced ironically by Mitt Romney a few years prior. And this shows that the status quo, the Republicans and the Democrats have this trick that they will definitely use with Mamdani, where Mamdani will start with a radical position and then move it further to the center, but still present it as a radical position. And then it will happen, it will be very much a status quo position, but the people will be saying and thinking that, oh, this was some type of radical accomplishment, when it really wasn't. All that.
Again, that's kind of like that's a big fucking read right there. I think that's a huge fucking reach. Like, maybe that'll happen. We have no idea. We have to acknowledge that compromise is going to fucking happen within politics. It's just kind of, that's just politics in general. Compromise will happen. Is he going to be the exact same as Barack Obama? Personally, I don't really think so, because again, we are seeing, and FD Signifier has acknowledged this himself, a lot of the progressive sort of advocates and people that he's appointing in positions of power and within his fucking cabinet and in his transition team. Like, he got fucking Lena Khan, for example. Like, again, like, that's not the same thing as Obama, who immediately appointed a bunch of establishment fucking stooges within his cabinet as soon as he could, and essentially snubbed progressive momentum within his campaign that basically helped him get in power in the presidency. Zohran Mamdani has not done the exact same stuff yet.
Plus that dumbass beer summit he did in his first 2 years as president.
Tonight, a few guys are in Washington, D.C. having a cold one. They just happen to be a Harvard professor, a police officer from Cambridge, Massachusetts, and the president of the United States.
All that happened. You get the point. What we're not going to do is allow Mamdani to use the excuse, I need to govern to the center or I won't get a second term. No. If he doesn't clearly fight for the promises he made during the campaign without turning them into moderate centrist reforms on the status quo, then he shouldn't get a second term. Period. End of conversation. I don't expect Mamdani to accomplish everything perfectly, but I do expect what is accomplished to legitimately help the working class people of New York. Lastly, and I'm just repeating myself here, but I can't drive this home enough, remember that the people made Mamdani and not vice versa. For everyone who rolled for Mamdani, organized around his campaign, and was inspired by his win, congratulations, you completed the tutorial section of the game. The real game starts now. I guarantee, especially in a city like New York, there's plenty more that you can do. It is so important that we do not slink off to the background after this political win, expecting Mamdani to just do everything we have in our imagination without being there to pressure him, hold him accountable, and create the...
Well, not only that, but again, help get people within like city council who are sympathetic to Zohran Mamdani's sort of platform, you know, DSA work and whatnot. Like, there's so much work that's left to do. Like, people helping advocate for Zohran's like progressive political positions. Like, there's a ton of different stuff. Like, I don't know, even like somehow like getting enough money in order to get like local like radio ad buys or some shit to advocate for Zohran Mamdani's positions. Like, there's a ton of different shit that you can fucking do, right? Like, the work is not over until the improvements to the material conditions on the ground are implemented.
The environment for his platform to be viable. It's important for people to have a community and coalition powerful enough to be held accountable to. If it's just tweets and video essays, it's not going to amount to much. One thing I've been repeating a lot lately that I have to credit Dr. Jared Ball for is the fact that it's the people who make political leaders and the political environment of any time possible. I've done videos about the flawed politics of folks like Beyonce or Kendrick Lamar, etc., and how as much as we want them to be these radical political artists, they very much play things pretty safe. And that's because as a people, black and otherwise, we haven't created the environment of struggle that influences artists and leaders to be beholden to what we really desire. When we go back and look at the 60s and 70s and praise people like Harry Belafonte, James Baldwin, Nina Simone, Sidney Poitier, and many others who were pushing a truly radical pro-black agenda in the mainstream media in the 60s, understand that's because the culture at the time demanded it almost in unison. We had the power in our approval and dollars to hold them to account, and we still have that.
Yeah, you know, civil rights movement, Martin Luther King, you know, shit like that.
Now. So if you were active, stay active. If you weren't active, get active. If getting active isn't easy, consider other ways you can still contribute. And that brings me back to my folks here in Buffalo. These folks from Lola just started something and began serving their community because they had a vision for trying to do more than just go to protests and pout about it on Twitter. And in the process of doing real work, they encountered the fact that Buffalo, New York is trying to be the site of yet another Cop City project.
We kept talking.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Not Cop City. Jesus Christ. Yeah, the whole campaign there in Atlanta to stop Cop City was fucking crazy. Like, unironically, like, advocates got killed by the police. I think the individual's name was Tortuguita, right? was a environmental advocate who got killed by Atlanta police, I think, if I recall correct, if I'm recalling the story there specifically. Yeah, it's genuinely fucking insane, right? Like, Cop City is basically like, let's make a military style, like, simulation ground for the police in order to train more and more for what purpose exactly? I don't know. To continue repression of the people of America, like, generally speaking. Like, Cop City is so fucking bad, dude.
And we were just like, we're tired of screaming outside of City Hall where people are not hearing us. Let's go inside. So we worked on a ceasefire resolution to try and put more attention on it, and to get politicians who will most likely not speak out when it comes to, Israel as a whole. We didn't gotta get into it. I already know, like, you can't say nothing about Israel. So we were like trying to challenge that. We put a ceasefire resolution. We started to get a lot of movement and stuff around that. And ultimately it did raise awareness, but it didn't get, to the point that we wanted it to get. So we found out almost by accident about how they're planning to build a police training facility in Buffalo. And immediately we were just like, we see how it's related to Palestine. We see how state violence is just like, a weapon to keep people down globally all the time. And this is just the example of it in Buffalo.
As some of you know, there was a huge fight to stop Cop City in Atlanta. And while it was unsuccessful, it was still part of a bigger wave of leftist activity in the city that also inspired the country and the world in general. And understand they're trying to build cop cities everywhere, and these battles to stop them are hard and costly. But they have probably one of the best opportunities to win their fight due to the relative weakness of Buffalo city purses and the fact that they have already found legal flaws in the process and development of their Cop City plan.
I say that we've have been inspired by Atlanta Cop City. We've also tried like different tactics that y'all have done over there in Atlanta too. We did a petition. Common Council didn't care. So we always knew that a lawsuit was possible, and like kept that in our back pocket, because we just knew that in the process of trying to rush to build this facility, that the city was going to make mistakes, like our elected officials usually do. So it's something that we kept in mind. The grounds that we are suing on are, the grounds that neighbors in the area where they're trying to build the facility would be, suing on, are based on the environmental impact. The city did do an environmental impact study, but there were plenty of flaws, as we suspected. So that will be what the grounds of the lawsuit would be on, considering neighbors in the area would be most impacted, whether it be like through lead poisoning or different chemicals in the area that will come into the community because of a training facility.
So Lola is looking to do a funding drive to pay for legal action to sue the city of Buffalo in this issue and do mutual aid directly within their community as a form of growing their organization. Remember that this is where the whole socialist mayor phenomenon low-key started a few years ago by a black woman. It would kind of be fitting that some other black women were able to claim this victory as well, and you can help contribute to that. Please see info for their project in the description and support as much as you can. And as usual in these types of political videos, please, as wisely as possible, use the comment section as a place to direct people to organizing opportunities. No start is too small. In my opinion, if you're just getting out there, it's not like it'll be a magical fix, but nothing gets fixed by just watching video. That said, if you do want to help grow the channel, do all the things the algorithm likes, leave a comment, a like, share this with others, and if you're really dead.
Very cool, very good. Yeah, I don't know, like, comment, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. Do all that good YouTube algo shit. You know how it is. Oh, yeah, overall, it's my general sort of, I guess, like, takeaways from this video. Conclusion of sorts, I suppose you could say. Broadly speaking, yes, I do heavily agree with a lot of prescriptions that FD Signifier has to say about, like, Barack Obama, a bunch of stuff with Zohran Mamdani. But I think, again, we should not fall into the trap of people being overtly cynical about the most effective sort of, like, left of liberal sort of political advocates that exist right now within American politics. They are a rare breed, and again, like, Zohran Mamdani is still mayor-elect. He has not gone into power yet. Being overtly cynical is also an incredibly fucking dangerous enemy, and we need to understand that it is important that sometimes compromises need to be made, and that some fights just should not be picked. Not at this moment. I think in the case of the NYPD and with Commissioner Jessica Tisch, albeit she is an incredibly fucking odious figure, she did help in a lot of anti-corruption sort of cases where Eric Adams put in a bunch of stooges within the NYPD at the behest of Donald Trump so he can try to get a pardon for his own corruption charges. Classic New York fucking style politics right there, right? So it makes a lot of sense that in that particular respect, Zohran is not going to pick much of a fight right now with the NYPD and just suggest some of the reforms that he wants to do with the NYPD to not try to rock the boat too much because of just how powerful of an institution the NYPD is in particular, right? again, he's probably going to try to pick more fights if he gets more political capital under his sort of belt, and is going to be way, way, way more effective in trying to be able to push for actual reform within the NYPD. So, again, I agree with a lot of the points that FD Signifier has had to say within, about like Barack Obama, with a bunch of the stuff that he said about Zohran, right? Overall, a lot of the prescriptions are correct. There are just some issues that I have, specifically with being overtly cynical on some specific things, right? Like, and I've brought up my sort of like quibbles and disagreements that I, generally speaking, have in this video. But overall, it's a good video. It's a solid video. Good critiques. Don't be afraid to believe in people, right? Like, we can yammer on about policy, how the left wins in terms of policy, but if you don't have that fucking main character energy, considering how critically uneducated the American populace is by design through a lot of the destruction of the American education system that has happened throughout many fucking decades, we need to be able to acknowledge that it is okay to have belief in someone, to have hope in people as well, besides the overtly sort of cynical sort of takes that most lefties would have about politicians who are saying big things and are promising some stuff. Give them the room to be able to breathe in order to be able to try to implement some of these policies. I mean, even FD himself said, like, I mean, it's probably not going to be 100% perfect, but I'm overall, for some of the improvements to the working class that Zohran is suggesting. It's like, okay, so then give my man some fucking room to be able to try to implement that stuff. Because you pressing on him for these sort of potential, I don't know, wanting to not preempt failure, but sort of like talk about how the sort of like cynical criticism and the likelihood of failure being as prominent as it is not really going to help the situation, is only going to make things harder. So again, it's a difficult balancing act, but it is okay to have hope in order to be able to have some form of improvement to the material conditions that are currently on the ground within New York City. Because overall, in all leftist sort of goals, that is what we all want in general. Improvements, bettering of the material conditions for the working class all across the world. So that's, generally speaking, all I really have to say on this. It's good to have hope. It's good to have belief in someone who is willing to basically bring forth some form of change, and being overtly cynical right off the get-go, I don't think is very, very productive either. Albeit it is useful, I don't think it is productive. It's, again, like I said before, difficult sort of balancing act. I don't think there's really much else to say besides, well, that.